which will allow us to then provision the enterprise data warehouse to allow more further reporting. Okay, so then what else is provisioned? Okay, obviously you have a SQL server is not enough. We need real application servers that serve the application, and so we've got Windows containers, so Windows Server containers. And what do these Windows Server containers do? Well, obviously the first and foremost Windows Server container and service that we need to be that needs to be implemented is a security and identity layer, right? And that's going to be used. Obviously, you can see I've added the AD Active Directory obviously on there as well. But that is obviously the first. That's where it'd be the identity layer, because we're dealing with lots of servers. We're dealing with users. We're dealing with lots of application layers. We've got a platform layer for serving many of the services, which I'm going to talk about shortly. We've got the obviously the application layer. You've got the client layer as well. Obviously the Windows servers obviously will all be provisioned as part of your implementation. So what is it that these Windows servers are actually serving to you? Well, these are the services, right? So we've got the REST services, you've got OData, you've got SOAP, right? And you're probably wondering why so many variations. You've got REST and OData. So what is the difference between all of these, right? Now, SOAP is, as you know, more of a traditional approach, and I don't know how long that's going to last for within F&O, but it's there and it is being used, obviously, for more of the legacy integrations. But primarily people are using the web API, OData, and the REST, right? Now, the REST service is the standard service for the application, okay? So we can provision a web API. Basically, it'll be a custom service, or using the web API for basically provisioning custom services with our custom X++ classes. Also data entities. So data entities will also can be exposed via OData and RESTful service. And so when you enable the data entities for very specific business scenarios, integration scenarios, then we have that service available within F&O to be consumed. We also have, obviously, I talked about the X++ classes to be able to apply your customizations and model changes and provide your custom endpoints for your implementation. But we've also got, and obviously that's part of the web services that are there. We can extend those web services. But also, a very, very important one is business events. That, again, is going to play a huge role in a lot of your integrations. And we're going to be talking a lot more about that during the developer bootcamp at the end of the month. But I just want to kind of give you an idea of what the architecture is for finance and operations, what makes it different from any other type of application out there. And then we've also got Alireza, who's going to be talking about the DMF framework, right, for managing the data integrations. So we have that service as well that's running. He's going to do a whole session on that in actually next week's bootcamp. And then we've got all the other services. Obviously, you've got the data access and security services. You've got the task recorder capabilities to be able to record your and that's really good for training materials, for example, right? And then you've got performance management for cache. You've got the form engine batch service, because you don't want to be running everything. You want to have some jobs that run overnight. You've got your reporting and analytics service, which we've kind of already talked about. You've got your workflow service. And then finally, you've got your dual write service, right? Now, dual write is something which I've been doing a lot of. And that's basically where we combine the CRM and ERP worlds together. And so that dual write service allows you to do that with an F&O, to be able to configure the data integrations, the ERP data, transaction data. We can actually sync that now with our CRM within Dynamics CE using the dual write mechanism. So that's the services that are provisioned. And then in addition to that, we have all these features. Now, a lot of these features Ramit has already talked about, but we're talking about here the general ledger, obviously the fundamental, this is the fundamental core operations for F&O, and we're talking about managing, illegal entities' financial records. We wanted to be able to register debits and credits, obviously. This is where the fiscal calendar, the dimensions are all set up, the account structures, the journal concepts, the financial processes. This is where it's handled. Then we've got the accounts receivable and then the accounts payable, right? Again, core functionality for finance, all about managing the balance of funds from customers and for products and services that need to be invoiced, right? And then obviously money that is owed to the organization from vendors and suppliers. And this would include things like, vendor payments and settlements. We've got three-way matching, for our invoices. There are features that allow us to do that within F&O. And then we've got credit management, collection processes, subscription billing, all of that is part of that. Cost accounting. Now, Billur was originally going to cover cost accounting. We may get a chance to cover it in one of the next sessions. But cost accounting will allow us to be able to then provide processes for classifying, analyzing, and summarizing costs occurred to the business. We've got budgeting, cash management, fixed assets that was covered earlier by Ramit, expense management. There's regulatory features as well available for various countries. There's asset leasing, subscription management that I mentioned, credit and collection management. So these are all the core features that are provided within the finance module. Obviously, I've not mentioned the supply chain, the HR, right? I've not mentioned any of that, right? That's for the next boot camp. But for finance, these are the core application features which are served by these services, by the database and the application servers. These are the key services that are provisioned. Now, in order to deliver these features, there are additional services that also need to be that are made available by the actual Dynamics 365 F&O platform. So those features that I referred to are things related towards the Azure Synapse link, which I told you about earlier. That does need to be configured. There's also LCS. So LCS has been slowly phased out, but for our deployments inside of F&O, we have LCS to be able to deploy our packages downstream. That's slowly getting moved into Power Platform. We actually have a session on that in the developer bootcamp. We've got a POS, we've got POS integrations available. We've got a mobile app. We've got blob storage. There is blob storage that's used inside of F&O for certain documents. Obviously, you've got the web client, and then you've got the Power Apps integrations. Now, the way of developing and using F&O is changing now with the Power Platform. So embedding Power Apps inside of F&O, using Power Automate workflows and Power BI is a hugely utilized for F&O implementations, as you can imagine, for reporting. And then obviously I've also included Dataverse in there, which is used in the dual right scenario. And again, we've got a whole session on that in the actual developer bootcamp covering how to get that correctly set up. In fact, that's next week. Next week we'll be covering how to get that correctly set up. So that is the high-level overview of the architecture. Let's see what time it is, because I think we need to introduce our... Oh, yeah, just in time for to introduce our next speaker. So just for everyone's awareness, we have our next speaker joining us, Gustav. He's actually a fast-track recognized solution architect, right? So he's a highly accredited finance and operations solution architect, and he'll be covering electronic invoicing. As you know, invoicing is a very core feature of an ERP, of a financial system. So he'll be going through and elaborating on that. Then we also have Brittany Burke, and many of you are excited with Brittany's session. She's going to do more of a deep dive into financial transactions, right? So you want to hold on to your seats and definitely attend that session. And then finally, we've got electronic reporting, okay, by Alireza. So again, a very important key feature that would be used to enable out-of-the-box reporting inside of F&O. We want to reduce the amount of development for your implementation, and electronic reporting allows us to do that. So without further ado, I'm going to stop sharing, and we will allow Gustav to just test to see if he is able to share his if his microphone is working, because we've had some technical issues. So let's just make sure Gustav is good to connect with us. Hello there, Gustav.
Testing. Hello, Raz. Can you hear me?
Hey, Gustav. Excellent. Thank you for joining us. Excellent. Is it all the way from Norway?
No, Sweden actually, but they are easy to mix up.
Excellent. Thank you so much.
Yeah, Stockholm, Sweden.
Yeah. Excellent.
Thanks for being.
Well, no, thank you. Thank you for connecting. We're on time. We are on schedule. So Gustav, I think let's go ahead and let's see if you can share your screen. And
I will.
Yeah.
Let's see if you can see my presentation.
We can see your presentation, Gustav. Gustav, so I think we're kind of almost there. We're just a minute or two away from your starting time. And to be honest, we have been running behind schedule, so it's great that we finally caught up today with all the sessions. I'm going to quickly look up the Q&A just before before we get you started, just to make sure if I've missed any questions in there. So I'll take a look at the Q&A, and what we'll do, Gustav, is we're good to go now. We are on the hour now. So what I'll do, Gustav, is without further ado, I'd like to introduce you to take over.
Thank you so much, Raz. It's a pleasure being here and being with all of you. I hope you have enjoyed today, and we'll still continue enjoying it. There's a lot of content, and I heard someone say, or Raz mentioned, that some a bit scary. I hope to be less scary, but it's as Raz just showed with the infrastructure and all the components. It can be quite daunting, right? So my presentation today is the electronic invoicing. I mean, it can also be a very large area from zero to hero. Basically, it's the presentation I would have liked to have looked at or listened to when I first dove into customer outbound invoicing from Dynamics 365 Finance and Operations. So I have an hour, and I have 2 live demos and hopefully some questions as well. So I'll try to talk not too fast, but fast enough. Hope you'll enjoy it. Let's see, and just I'm looking at the Q&A, but reach out in the chat if there are any technical difficulties, if you can't hear or see my screen. So I think you've seen this a couple of times today. I left it in the presentation just to highlight that there is a lot of stuff happening here in the bootcamp. I'm very happy and humbled to be accepted as a speaker, and I hope to enlighten your day, afternoon, evening, depending on where you are. So the agenda for today is a quick introduction of myself and the topic itself. We'll go through some history and background, just because I come from an old AX experience, so it's worth noting why sometimes it's worth understanding the history to understand why something works the way it does right now. And then I'm going to have a little bit of a fictive mission here, because I got, when one of my implementation projects in 365, I've implemented electronic invoicing in a lot of ERPs, AX, older versions of AX and other ERPs as well. And the story has almost always been the same. There's a lot of technical mapping between different formats. Every country has their own format and so forth. So I thought I'd do like a fictive mission here that I got. Someone gave me a PBI and said, Gustav, you know e-invoicing, so you can fix the whole story here. We need to enable electronic invoicing to our customers. And I said, of course. And then I had to read up a lot on how to make that work in Dynamics 365. So that's going to be our mission today in an hour. Hopefully we can make it. And I'll walk you through some tools. Electronic reporting is one, and you will also see Alireza covering electronic reporting later on today with a focus on CBD, which is a very, very cool component. But it's all built around electronic reporting. So we'll have a look at that. And then, of course, some going live is not the most important thing. Once you go live, you also need to stay alive. So some good notes worth taking with you in your implementations. Hope that will cover the hour. So yeah, quick about me. As I mentioned, my history is I've been working with AX Axapta, as it was used to be known, since 2006, about that, 2007. I started out as a developer. Nowadays, I'm more of a technical or solution architect. So I try to learn as much as I can, which is a good note as well about the functionality of the product, while still trying to remember how to write X++ code. I've run a lot of e-invoicing implementations as well as real live ERP implementations, but with e-invoicing as a component. And as Raz mentioned, I'm a fast track recognized solution architect. There's a QR code to my LinkedIn page, but I think it's also You can find me on LinkedIn. So please connect if you have any questions. All right. History and background. So as I mentioned, I've done a couple of e-invoice implementations, and back in AX 2009 and 2012 and AX Accepta 4, AX4 and Accepta 3.0, we had, well, in 2009, we had something called Application Integration Framework. And that was kind of the same story for all previous ERPs or the legacy AX ones. Was like you have one tool to use. You have one hammer in your toolbox and you have to use it. There is no other ways of doing it unless you build everything from scratch. So we had the AIF-based exports. They were fairly good, fairly competent, but what they spat out of the ERP was a native like format. So in every project, you had to do a lot of meetings with integration teams, and you had to map, and you had to understand the different formats, specifically invoices. They can be very complicated when it comes to tax calculations and so forth. Time consuming. You have to do a lot of development in ERP, in integration layer. So well, suffice it to say, it can be quite a pain point. So now we come into today. I mean, in Europe, I'm based in Europe, in Sweden. So my main focus is, of course, Europe. But we've seen at least a low adoption in many countries of electronic invoicing, because you still have the paper-based invoicing and email invoicing, depending on where you're at. But now EU has come along and implemented a lot of legislation when it comes to electronic invoicing. The current state is that it's mandatory to have B2B invoicing in many European countries. Sweden currently does not have the mandatory option, but as part of, if you're part of a many public offices, they have it as a requirement when they are shopping for ERP systems. So it's necessary to be able to say that, yes, we can do e-invoicing. Many people require it. There are a lot of pain points historically, and which it is today as well, when it comes to master data preparation. Because one thing is doing the format, the other is ensuring that the data that you actually send to the format contains the right values. You need to have customer addresses, you need to have contact persons. We're going to look a little bit on the validation layer here on what we need to prepare. So I think when I came into doing e-invoicing, it's not usually a one-person job, because you need to collaborate. You need to ensure that you have proper customer master data, and you need to have some kind of technical expertise to be able to make it work. Let's see. And one of the previous pain points, of course, that it is today as well, is that you have different formats in all countries. But in the EU, at least, there has been a standardized format that's trying to roll out. It's called PEPL. That's the one we're going to look at today. But as you know, with standards, my friend Johan always used to say, standards are great. Everyone should have one, because there are standards, and then there are dialects of standards, because you have operators. The same goes with bank payment files. The EU mandated a specific format for SEPA payments. It should look exactly like this. But it never looks exactly like that, because all the banks have their different dialects, right? And it's almost the same a little bit when it comes to electronic invoicing. But if you have at least a common base to start from, then that's a very good starting point. Previously, you had Svea-faktura in Sweden, Finn-faktura in Finland. You had all of these different localized formats. So a lot of hours went into development there. So that's kind of the background. So then now we fast forward to 2025, and I got the mission that we have. We are going to enable e-invoicing in Dynamics 365 Finance and Operations with PEPL BIS billing format. I'm not sure what BIS stands for actually, but it's a standardized format to export both credit notes and debit invoices in a specific format. We're also going to deliver the invoice to customers, because those are two separate things. One is to generate the invoice, and one is to actually send it to the customer, as I'm going to show you. We're also going to discuss a little bit on onboarding strategy, because not every customer can receive an electronic invoice, but they might shift ERP and they might want to move into e-invoice. So you need to have a strategy for onboarding your customers onto your e-invoice, because hopefully you will save money, and you will also save the environment by reducing the amount of printed paper that we all spend. But when you do e-invoicing, when you do in every type of e-invoicing, you need to have a monitoring strategy because you need to know the entire chain, right? You need to know, did the invoice posting batch job work? Okay, yeah. Did it print and fire away the electronic invoice? Yes. Okay, was it delivered? So you need to monitor all of these chains. So you have a different set of tools, but you can only monitor to the point of actually having delivered it to your customer. You cannot, usually at least normally, monitor that they have successfully got it into their system. That's what you have payment journals for and the credit and collections. Right? So how are we going about to achieve this mission? This is one task that I've got many times. We have our favorite ERP, of course, at least everyone in this meeting's favorite ERP, I hope. Dynamics 365 Finance and Operations. Finance, it has many names, but I still stick to Finance and Operations. We are going to look at the Electronic Reporting Framework, ER. This is one part of it. It does a lot of things, and it can do a lot of things as well, but we're going to kind of squeeze into the invoicing component of ER today. We're also going to look at format repository, or actually just repository. And this has been a kind of complicated story, well, a long-running story, to be fair, where the repository is basically where you store all your formats, your models, all the stuff that you either get from Microsoft or all the formats that you build on your own. They need somewhere to live. And it has, from the start, they lived in what's called LCS. I think Raz mentioned that as well earlier, the ALM platform. Lifecycle services, and then it moved to, and this will not be on any test, so I don't think you will note that Dataverse is the final solution here, but it moved from LCS to RCS, which stands for Regulatory Configuration Service. Microsoft always loves their abbreviations and portals, but now it's moved from RCS, and I hope that's the final step here, into Dataverse, which makes more sense. So any Dynamics 365 Finance and Operations environment has a connected Dataverse environment as well, which is where you will store your formats. I'm going to show you this in a demo shortly. So the only things that you actually need to remember from this meeting here today is Dataverse and Globalization Studio, which I will show you. LCS and RCS. LCS you will still come into contact with, but RCS is at least being phased out if it hasn't been completely shut down already. We're also looking a little bit into feature management. This will become more clear shortly, and I think Raz mentioned that as well earlier. This is things basically that you can toggle on and off. Some of them are automatically on, some of them are you can choose whether you want to use them or not. And it's important in this regard because you can enable additional functionality using electronic invoicing with the help of feature management, or disable it if you don't want it. And we're going to look at something called e-invoicing add-in. Do you need it or not? And that's there is no clear answer to that yet. So we'll see. Also some validation tools. I will include links here. I hope that we can share the presentations afterwards. Otherwise, reach out and I will share them in the chat or on LinkedIn. Just some help to get started. And something called EDI brokers. I was going to say they are kind of like the final boss of electronic invoicing, but in reality, the customers are always the final boss because they can turn things around. But EDI brokers are important to know what they do and how they fit into your kind of e-invoicing story. Sorry. Okay. I'm talking very fast here, but I have a lot of demos to cover as well. So hopefully it's not too fast, but we're going to jump straight into it. We have the framework called electronic reporting, or ER. It's a new in quotations because it's not really new anymore. It has been around for a couple of years, but it's new for 365. So it's new for AX. It did not exist earlier, and it's been very, very useful, and it's quite tricky to understand in the beginning. But it covers reporting requirements for legal and statistical reporting, and that's it has loads and loads and loads of legal documents like tax reporting, payment files, inbound and outbound. So you can have in any market that Microsoft says, okay, we are regulatory compliant in this market. We comply with legal requirements and legal documents. You will find, hopefully at least, I can't promise it, but it should be there, all the formats needed for reporting to tax authorities, because as I mentioned before, there is no standard format for everything. There are so many different formats and so many different regulations all across. That's the major pain of working in global ERP solutions, that no country is similar to the other. But ER is kind of the starting point from where you can come from, what I described earlier from history, like where you had to build all of these things from scratch normally, which was a pain as a developer. Now you can, as long as there is a standard format, you at least get a very, very good starting point where you can download a format to build a tax report to authorities, or in this case, to generate an invoice document in a format that most operators will accept. And that's a huge time saver. So, but it's very, very big ER. I will show you one thing today. Alireza will show you a little bit more, hopefully, about CBD documents. So it's a very powerful framework. And I don't think these 2 sessions today will cover everything. There's a lot more to learn. So yeah, it has configurable models and formats and mappings. It can be used in several scenarios, as I said. It is, in many cases, a low-code solution. And here's where it can become tricky, because you can absolutely argue that it's low-code if you just import a format and use it. But in many cases, as you will see in my demo as well, it helps to be a little bit technical. You don't need to know X++, as long as every data that you actually need in the format is there somewhere. Then you need to, if you're good at writing Excel formulas and you can learn a new formula language, then you can probably survive ER. But it's good to be a little bit techno-functional. So if we go back to our mission here, sometimes if you get that mission and you are a functional specialist rather than a technical specialist, you might need some help in some of the more tricky scenarios in ER. So I'm going to go into some concepts here that are used throughout ER, and I hope that this will be helpful, because this took me a while to get like a complete mental picture of how ER works in getting data in and out of the operational database of Dynamics 365. So we're starting out with the base application data, Azure SQL, and it's usually it's not just one database, so it's very complicated. But for this picture here, we have one main ERP database, an Azure SQL. We also have something called a data model, and a data model is not necessarily the tables that we have in SQL. They're an illustration of data. It can be a data entity, it can be a star schema that you use in Power BI, but it's a model that kind of explains something. In this case, we're going to look at an invoice model, and the invoice model has headers and lines and tax information, but it's not necessarily named exactly as the tables and fields that reside in the ERP data. So it's a model that we build, and we model it out because it makes more sense to business users to work off a model than to work directly off tables and fields that can be quite non-explanatory in many cases. So we have ERP data, and we have a data model, star schema, and then we have something called a format. The format is exactly what it sounds like. It's the PEPL XML format, or it's the SEPA XML format. It can be an XML schema, it can be a JSON format, it can be a CSV file, but it's in this particular scenario, we're going to use an XML schema. And then what ER does, and this is for outbound scenarios, we're not going to cover so much inbound today, but you can imagine just turning the arrows around here pretty much. So the format is then transformed into an outgoing document, basically. So we generate the format, and then we create a document in XML, or again, CSV, any type of format that you actually need to produce. So what happens is that we create a mapping. Either we download it. There are many pre-built model mappings here to these invoice models, but the model mapping basically takes care of the complicated mapping to our fancy model, which has pretty names for everything. Then we do the mapping to the complicated things in the database, right? Because Dynamics 365 has a very, very normalized database, so you can find customer information is spread out across basically 50 tables. So that would be quite tricky to build into a report. That's what the model mapping handles here. So it takes care of that heavy lifting and the complicated side of mapping your data into a model. And that can be quite tricky, as you will see shortly. We're not going to demo so much building model mappings. And then from that data model, you map to your format. So you're not mapping your PEPL format file directly to the tables in ERP. You're mapping them to the model, which is in turn mapped to application data. it's important to understand, because once you get all the way to the outgoing document creation and you understand this model, you can see that you can also then reuse both the model mapping. You can map the same data model to different types of fields or different functionalities, or you can also reuse the same data model to multiple formats. So that's the point of having these things abstracted, because then you don't have to build everything from scratch all the time. If you have an invoice model, you can map it to different types of invoices, perhaps. You can also map different types of formats towards the same data model, which is the more normal use case, perhaps. You have different formats, the same model. Makes it easier for everyone to work with. So this took me a while to figure out, or to understand. It's clearly explained on Learn, but sometimes you need to work with things a little while before everything falls into place. So I hope it helps you guys as well. Okay, so then we have something called an ER repository. I mentioned it. That was the one with LCS and CRS. So it's a storage. Again, everything that can be used in ER is maintained in a repository. We have the big Microsoft repository. They can be imported, and then you can extend these formats. But as soon as you want to, so you don't need to have your own repository really, unless you're doing some extensions of the standard formats. Then you need to have a repository of your own. Otherwise, you won't be able to move these things in a good fashion between environments. But it's fairly easy to set up nowadays. So I will send you some links on how to do that. I won't go through the installation in detail today. But what you do is that you configure something called a Dataverse repository, and you create yourself or your company or your partner company as a configuration provider. And from that point on, you can download a Microsoft format or model or like a finalized solution, and then you can derive from that and extend it. I will show you that shortly, how it works. But it's important to understand that nowadays it's Dataverse. That will just be, it's very seamless now, because you can work with these things from within finance and operations. At least on the later versions now, it's been very seamless to move into Dataverse. It was a bit more tricky earlier, but it's important to understand that the concept of a repository, if you want to build anything and then kind of share it with other environments and other solutions, and if you don't want to end up in like exporting XML files across environments and losing control, it's important to know about repositories and how they work. All right, now I've talked or showed too many PowerPoint pages. So let me jump into Peppol. I did this presentation like 6 months ago in another conference, and then I asked Copilot to generate a picture for me with the prompt that you see on the screen. I got this picture then, and I thought, okay, let's try to do it again 6 months later to see how much Copilot has improved in generating invoices or pictures. So I won't make a comment on my own. You can be the judge. The same prompt 6 months later gives me this picture. I'm not sure. I think he's more happy. I'm not sure. It's still not there really with the text typing. So yeah. I'm still here. Thank you so much, Dynamics 365. I hope you can still see my screen. I've prepared a demo here in my tier 2 environment. Let me just go back to Teams so I can see if anything is problematic. So if you remember our mission here, we got in our lap to enable electronic invoicing for a customer in finance and operations. So to start with, we need to figure out, okay, which format that we know. We need to have the Peppol format. So I'm going to go to a workspace called electronic reporting. Makes sense. Something electronic. So I'm going here. And here you will see what I mentioned here. These are my configuration providers. So this is my test environments. If you go into a blank vanilla environment, and this, just to be clear, this environment has no customizations whatsoever. So what you see here is a completely standard code. I've just added some repositories for testing purposes. But what you will see in a clear environment is just this one, Microsoft. That's it. And then if you want to create your formats and extend them, then you can create your own configuration provider and your own repository. So to fetch a standard one, I can go to the repository here in Microsoft. I click on Open. And here is where it becomes complicated, right? So if you remember what I said, it covers a lot. So here you have all the models that are available to you. So if I expand all, you can imagine scrolling through this list and you have to select which one, right? So that's one key point to know which format to use. There can be some struggle here because you have multiple versions of some formats. In many cases, it's super clear, but in this particular instance, I know exactly which one I'm going to import. And as a TV chef, I prepared this by importing it, so you won't have to wait. Sometimes it can take a couple of minutes. You will find here in the invoice model, can probably be like 10 different sessions covering different formats here, but in the invoice model, you see what I mentioned here. There are so many different formats all around the world that need to be covered for regulatory reasons, a Swiss QR bill. So that can be a pain point to understand which one to use. In this case, we're going to use the UBL sales invoice, and there I see my Peppol sales invoice. So how this works is here I can now press, I've already done this, but I can look here, I can see versions, right? So you will always, or in most cases, you will want to get the latest version because that's the most up-to-date version of that particular format. This is not very often changed. The latest version is from July 29th last year, but it also then contains all the dependencies. So once I figure out which one I want to import and try out, I can just press import here, and it will download and import all of the dependencies as well into my local repository or into my local environment, actually, Dynamics 365. So I don't need to figure out all of the dependencies here. That's one of the main key takeaways, I think, from ER, that it helps out a lot with that as long as you're able to navigate in this forest of formats. So I've imported my format. I can go then into my reporting configuration here. This is local then in my specific environments. I've done a lot of imports in this because it's a test environment, but here I can see my invoice model. If I scroll down, I see my UBL sales invoice and I see my Peppol sales invoice. And here you can see this is created by me, but it's maintained by Microsoft. If I refresh this, sometimes it's a little bit slow. You can see the configuration provider here, Microsoft. So this format is imported and it's shared. I can press designer here. I can have a look at it. I can narrow it down. I can go through all of the model mappings and everything, but I cannot change it. So we'll look quickly at the designer, and in the next demo, I will show you how to change it as well. Unless it stays processing here for a long while, we'll see. I warm this up every time I do a demo, so hopefully we won't have to wait too long. So here we go. And now here you can see, this is well, I hope no one recognizes it by heart, because then you're more damaged in Peppol than I am. But this is the Peppol format, basically. And if you run through this, you can see how it's mapped to the model here. So on the left side, we have the format, the actual XML nodes. I can't edit them now, but you can have formulas here, and you can have mapping then to the model, which you have on the right-hand side here. Sorry. So this is the invoice model that I showed you before. This is not actual tables in Dynamics. This is a model, which is in turn then mapped to tables using that model mapping. And so here, if I want to map something, I want to have an attachment here, perhaps, I can go here, and then I can map these values to the left side, which we'll show you shortly. But now I have my format. It's imported into the environment. And one nice thing I noticed, because now I need to enable that format. I need to tell my company, USRT here, I need to tell my company that I want to use this format when I'm sending out electronic invoices. I need to go to accounts receivable parameters. I think I had it as a favorite as well, but just to show you. And this is also described in the Learn articles that I will show you in the links, but sometimes it takes a while to read and get down to the actual key takeaways. So here we have something called electronic documents. And here I can then specify. And one nice thing that I didn't know until earlier is that they've added a feature here that kind of makes it easier for you not to have to navigate to all of that repositories. If you see here, I can select here the formats that I have imported, but if I hadn't imported anything, it would also provide me with a list of applicable sales invoices that I could actually import here. This is nice. This was not there before. I don't know which version it came with, but it helps a lot because then you don't need to navigate. So there are a number of electronic documents all around where you can use or import your documents. So it's a nice feature. But for this demo, I've already selected Peppol Sales Invoice, so I will keep using it. And you see here, I can also add collection letter, ER formats, credit notes. Of course, most commonly, you will also have to implement credit notes because it's sad, but sometimes customers want returns. It's a pain. But then we also have product invoice, credit notes. So these are different formats because they're handled a little bit differently, specifically in Peppol as well. So now I've imported my format. I've configured my AR parameters to use that specific format, which is pure standard. I haven't touched it yet. And I need to enable my customer to also receive electronic invoicing because it's controlled with that particular parameter. You need to have a format, you need to specify the format, and then you need to enable electronic invoicing on a customer or on the customers that you want. So, of course, I prepared a specific customer here. And again, if you remember, the Copilot summary here will be quite fun because I've only posted a lot of invoices. I never paid them, so I think I will look to be 24 posted invoices. No customer payments were recorded, so it's a very bad customer, but still good for demo purposes. So this, I've actually spent some time to fill in master data on this customer to help out in actually getting some good test data out. But I think apart from the technical side, which is quite easy, one of the main time drivers here when enabling e-invoicing is checking your master data to ensure that you have tax exempt numbers. You need to have a contact person. Many operators won't actually accept your invoice even if you send blank values in specific fields. You do get some helpful warnings when posting the invoice if you're missing some actual data. There are some validations in the format itself. It will throw a warning if you're missing a field or a value in a field. But those validations only help you to a point. Customers might also require stuff. So working with your master data and identifying what you need to populate and migrate, those are very critical things. But just to get started, the magic actually lies in this little toggle over here, e-invoice, on and off. It's that simple. You just go to the customer, ensure that you have a format, check the e-invoice button. You can also have attachments. It's another framework where you can have, let's say you have insurance documents, you have maybe safety data sheets. You can include those attachments in the Peppol format as well. It will just be a binary blob, basically, within the XML node. The file gets larger, but it works. I won't cover that in detail. That's also covered in the documentation, but it does work in standard. You just need to focus on it, setting up your attachments and your attachment rules so they work. So yeah, so now I have my e-invoice tag on. I can create a sales order. We can go to, or I can create from here. And let's see if we can generate a electronic invoice for my sales order. I did warm this up before, so hopefully the cache is fast now and you don't have to wait. Yeah, pretty fast. It's okay. 0001. Contoso is great test data. I mean, it's fantastic to have all of these complex ERP operations runnable in an environment that you can spin up quite fast. It's very, really cool. But at some point, you kind of get used to this same item numbers, right? So now we have my customer e-invoice test. We have my item number. I'm going to skip the entire pick and pack process here. It takes a lot of time, but I do need to complete it because of pricing. Get back to my customer here. Okay, so let me just jump back to the sales orders. Not sure why it does that. I think it might be because I'm coming from the customer, but I can go here and you can see this is an environment I test in a lot. So yeah, now I have a sales order, which is ready to be invoiced. And here's another key takeaway. This is the same as it was in AIF, the previous one. When you post your invoices, if you want them to fire away in electronic invoicing, you need to, first of all, print it. If you do it like this, if you just post and don't print, it won't send it out. Even though everything is correctly set up, it won't do anything. It will just post the invoice. It won't do anything with electronic invoicing. You need to print it, but you cannot print it to screen. So you need to print it to print archive or anything other than screen, actually. There's logic in Xbox Plus there. If screen, then don't e-invoice. And there's maybe a purpose. It's actually a good thing if you want to do some invoices and you want to avoid having them automatically sent to your customer, then post them and print the screen. But it's also a bad thing because you might have I have had real use case scenarios where some users post invoices manually throughout the day, and they didn't know about this. So you had kind of a disruption in monitoring because they thought it was sent away, but they didn't know. So remember that if you're going to automate posting and electronic invoicing and you have a batch job running, remember to set the printing settings of that batch job to be print archive is a good solution for it, which we have now. Here we have print archive and we have print invoice. So let's post our invoice and see what happens. It's always praying to the demo gods when when you try these things out live. And I hope it won't take too long to generate. And you see now in the background here that I got a little warning, tax revision must be filled in. These are warnings, right? So they won't stop your posting. And if I had a lot of master data issues here, like missing a contact person or stuff that is validated in the format, I would get a warning and a list of those so I could work with them. And again, it won't stop the processing. There are stopping errors as well, so you need to work with those, but they are mainly when you try to build your own custom format or you're missing something critical. So this is posted. If we click on message details, you can also see here, invoice added to the queue for processing. The file generation will take a while. So this means that the invoice is posted and I can go to my electronic reporting jobs. And I can find my list, my actual invoice here, 5:33 p.m. Yeah, that's this one here. So, and here I can go to show files. I have two. I will tell you why. And if I open this, here is my pep ball. Let's see which window it opens in. It opened in here. Here we go. So here is my invoice now in a pep ball format. This will be recognized. You can pass it, throw it into a standard pep ball validator. Might be some issues, of course. You can see here, which is something I'm going to show you shortly. This is Dynamics. Well, line ID is 1.000 decimal based. Also, the references can be decimal based. So this is not really a problem. It's just this is the most common explanation I have to do when talking to third-party systems and their integration developers. It's like, why are you sending us decimal-based invoice lines? They should be integers. And I always say, yeah, it's like how Dynamics works, but this is the most normal thing I do when changing formats. I will show you how you can get from this point to this point by just extending the format in the next demo here. But that's just one thing that you can do. And I usually argue that it's not really a problem. It can be a decimal as well, because you can have varying, you can shoot in a line between two lines. It can be a decimal, but normally I get this question. And also, I'll show you shortly as well, there is a toggle here. Let me just go quickly to AR. I think it's over here. Yeah, I included this in the PowerPoint as well, so you don't remember. This is also a finding. If you don't check this box here, assign sequential line numbers, this value, the line ID will get a huge, it's like a very random number, 9,346,000 something. Again, works, and it's for performance reasons for the posting period, but it's just an explanation that you have to do to your third party or to your customer. It might look weird if you get an invoice with two lines and the line that should say one says 9 million. So if you just check this little flag, you get a mini hit in performance. It's not noticeable in my experience, but you make your explanation and your discussions with your integration teams a lot easier. So that was a pro tip. So at this point, we've added a standard format. We've enabled the standard functionality of e-invoice on my customer here, which is enriched. I've told the system to generate two files because I use something called electronic reporting destination. This is what you can configure then on your format here. I've told my PEPBOL-based invoice to do this. It goes to archive with a document type called e-invoice. It also saves to file. And the reason is that when you go to document types, you can, let's see here, you can specify different, let's see, document types. So here on e-invoice, you can specify different locations, but this is kind of a limitation here, which I'm going to talk about shortly here, where you can only post these invoices to the built-in Azure storage, built-in database, or to SharePoint in standard without using e-invoicing get in. So I'm going to stop there for the first demo and jump back to the presentation. But this is the point where you get, without enabling any fancy functionality, just importing that document, first steps, getting a Peppol invoice out, and that's great. But it's out, but it's not really out because it's still stuck within Dynamics 365. There is no option here to deliver it to the customer via SFTP or Azure Blob Storage or anything like that. That's not there in standard right now without using something else. So again, with the Copilot pictures. So how do we deliver it? You can set it up as I showed you here before in electronic reporting destination. What you see in the picture here is actually an extension or an ISV where you can, it's just a recommendation because sometimes you do have to, or in many cases, you have to resort to development to smooth things out. If you're not using the e-invoice add-in, which you might, it's great, but it has its drawbacks as well, then you most likely need to do some kind of customization or logic to push the invoices out to something from which a third-party developer or integration team can pick it up. And this is one way of doing it. On the reporting destination, you can specify different blob storages. This is from Doccentric, I think. You can also build an event, perhaps, that actually pushes the event that you posted the invoice out and containing the connection string to the internal blob storage. Pretty much how recurring integrations work. That's one way of doing it. But in standard, you get the file, but it's the built-in blob storage. You can't easily access it. But you can also solve this using the e-invoice add-in, and again, or customization. I'm going to show you this shortly. I need to look at the time here, so I have time to wrap up all my demos. And here you see my pro tip. This is something that saved me some time for at least in explanations when it comes to invoicing. Okay, so while we wait on the developers to build our fancy stuff, we also need, because I can download this XML, the one that you just saw, I can download it. I can send it to my operator, or I can send it to my customer, perhaps, who can validate it. I can send the file. I can also use some online tools to validate it. And that's also a time consumer here. It's important to do that as early as possible to ensure that you have proper master data on your customers. And again, looking at the validations here, you see the warnings the same as you saw when I posted. If you don't have a tax exempt number, contact name, all these things, these warnings will pop up, but the invoice will still go out. So it might be stopped in other validation chains later on. This is an online Peppol validation tool. I've included that in the links as well. It will just dump the XML file and it will show you if it fits the standard and the validation tools. And the same validation rules are run by many operators, but some are just like warnings. It says fatal here, but you can have your operator handle those things as well. So this is just to get started to ensure that you have a properly structured XML. You're not having like major 20 fatal issues in your XML file. You can use these online tools. But again, you need to check with your operator or your broker to ensure. So what is a broker then? An EDI broker, I said it was a final boss, and I think the final boss is absolutely customers, but EDI brokers can also be super helpful, but they can also be a pain because you might have one set of validation here and they have another set of validation on their end. But what they are is that they are operators. You yourself, unless you are an operator, cannot put a Peppol XML invoice file onto the Peppol network. You need to register yourself as an operator, and to the e-invoice at least. And usually you have, I think Sweden has, I'm not sure, 20 of those or something like that. There are many EDI brokers out there, and they're doing all the heavy lifting. So you connect to them, then they connect to all of the different customers and vendors and their different formats. So an EDI broker is super useful and very, very good to have. And in many cases, it's a must-have. It depends on how much of the work you want to do yourself. But they handle onboarding and offboarding. It can absolutely simplify the process, and it will help you. But you need to ensure that you don't. There's like a chain of validation here. That you need to ensure your master data. You need to ensure that the Peppol file is proper, and then you need to ensure that the broker also agrees that yes, this is okay. And they can be also, of course, very, very helpful in your journey. So, and they can have their own validation tools. These are just some examples of brokers from Sweden. There are many more out in Europe and, of course, in the US. So understand your broker. I think that's a very important point. So the e-invoice add-in, and this is another thing that's important to understand. The e-invoice electronic invoicing add-in is a Microsoft managed. It's a microservice. It can handle a lot more of the whole e-invoicing story. It will take you from that point where we just left off in the demo, where you have a file, but it doesn't really leave Dynamics. It can pick that file up and do a number of things, including, of course, sending it outside of Dynamics. I will show you shortly how that works. It's a very capable microservice. It can do a lot of things. It can handle a lot of regulatory requirements and demands. It can publish and process responses. It's basically what you need, unless you have a good integration team or an existing platform to leverage, or a very capable broker and some customization to send the file to that broker. So there's also a last mile connector that Microsoft provides that connects the e-invoicing to an EDI broker. Because one thing the e-invoicing add-in cannot do, even if it can generate a PEPL file and it can put it on an FTP or a blob storage or something, it cannot place it again on the PEPL network. So PEPL is like a European network of operators. So to be able to submit the PEPL file, you still need to either be an operator or submit to an operator. That's at least important for the PEPL format, but if you have other means of formats to export, you can still use e-invoicing for actual submission to that broker. It does come with a lot of additional licensing, so here you need to do your math. I checked before this session, and I think last I checked, and I checked to see that it hadn't changed. When you activate this, it doesn't cost you anything to activate it. You get 100 invoices per month. It's included in your supply chain or finance license. If you need additional, you have to pay $300 per 1,000 invoices per month, and they do not carry over to next month. So you need to calculate here. I mean, if you don't have any fancy integration team and you don't invoice more than 100 per month, then great. If you invoice less than 1,000, still might be great, depending on how much you would have to pay for integration development and so forth. So it's important that you calculate based on how much you do. I had one customer, they have 10,000 invoices every month. So it's a quite easy business case for them to just kind of build that little thing to get the invoice out instead of installing in e-invoicing. But it's a very cool tool, and it can help out with a lot of scenarios. To enable it, you need to use feature management. You need to install Globalization Studio solution in Dataverse from AppSource, also described in the links. It's very simple. You just need access to the admin portal, PPAC, for your specific environment. But then you need to decide, should I enable this integration or not? Because it kind of changes how e-invoicing works. I'm going to show you that in my last 15 minutes here. Again, the same story. This was the picture 6 months ago, same prompt, much happier guy, strangely enough. Don't know what happened there. But going back to the demo then, let's see if we can do escape here. I will jump into feature management, but quickly I will show you here if I go to invoice journal. So I posted my invoice here, as you saw. And now if I go to invoice journal, the list of posted invoices, here you see I have a send button. So here I can resend that invoice, original copy. So that's pretty much it. I can resend an invoice and it will generate the document again. And if I have custom code, push it somewhere, it will just keep pushing it if I press resend. Now, if I activate my electronic invoicing feature, I've of course pre-installed it. So I just need to turn it on and off. And let's see, electronic invoicing. There it is. So if I enable it now, you will see, you will see those buttons are gone. There's a reason for that. I will show you shortly. So with this feature enabled, I can go to my Globalization Studio. Here you can jump back to the same ER I was just on, and you can go into electronic invoicing. And here's where you will configure the e-invoicing application. It's a separate application, but you configure it here. And I won't go into too much detail here because you can do a lot of stuff. I just want to show you this over here. So I configured my PEPAL format, the one I just set up, I can do this one or this one, the derived format. And from here, I can tell the microservice what should it do, because now we can actually get that XML file and do something with it. They can send it somewhere. They can sign it. It can, here you see my transform doc. That's the first step. So this will generate my invoice XML, same as you saw in the previous demo. And the processing pipeline here can then do a number of additional steps. It can get it from can get something from a file share. Normally you would send this to an Azure file share, and then some integration would pick it up from there, because they cannot reach that internal blob storage that it's put on now in an easy fashion, at least. But if you send it to a dedicated file share, then you can provide those details to the integration team much easier. And it can do a lot of steps here. And these steps, you see here, process response, you can send an email. So you can build your own quite complicated pipelines here. Or you can also import a lot of features from Microsoft that are for standard purposes. So I don't think we have time to go through all of these, of course, but it's worth noting that whenever you see that Microsoft or 365 covers a specific set of local regulatory demands, like Belgian electronic invoice, you have Egyptian, Saudi Arabian, a lot of these things, those require you to use this e-invoice feature, because you cannot import the Indonesian electronic invoice feature into ER, because it's an electronic invoicing feature. Be mindful when you read about, okay, oh, we can use this feature because it's there. You can, but then you have to use e-invoicing. And if you have more than 1,000 invoices monthly, it can be an expensive thing to do. It's worth noting. When you import these, then you get all of these pipelines and the formats, and you basically get a working feature up and running. And in some cases, you have to sign agreements with different providers. And these can be very complicated because you have to have invoicing steps where you need to connect to like a centralized service. You need to get a certificate or a QR code that you then need to just update your invoice with. It can be very complicated. Fortunately, those complications have not yet reached Sweden, so I'm happy with just using e-invoicing. But that's the kind of the purpose of the electronic invoicing add-in. It takes it the last mile, not all the way to PEPAL network, but it takes it the last mile to do something more with the invoice. The only other way to do that is to either use SharePoint, which is standard, or you can build something to ensure that it gets exported. It also comes with a lot of fancy submission components, which are also very important to know. But so instead of automatically sending the invoice when you post it, you have something called a, let's see what it is, electronic submission log document. I didn't include it here in the favorites. It has a submission log, or maybe I need to refresh. So it has another framework for handling, okay, has this invoice been sent to e-invoice? And it tracks it, so it prevents duplicates. So you need to have a batch job running to do electronic document submission log. Yeah. So here you can see my failed attempt here. I maybe disable something. So instead of having it automatically sent whenever you post the invoice, it will, you have a specific batch job that runs and tries to send it to the e-invoice service. So you have tracking. If it failed, you can rerun it. Those are things that you cannot do in the built-in solution. So it gives you a lot of more tools if you use the e-invoice add-in. I think it's nice. It's a very great little tool, and it fits a lot of purposes. But again, ensure you check your licensing requirements here, because it can be an expensive story as well. And these are just the license list prices I've seen. So any pricing discussion you have to have with partners and someone who can actually give you an actual figure. So don't shoot me if I'm wrong here, but at least that was the list price I could find. So yeah, so with that said, let's jump into ER and to show you the final thing here before I wrap things up. So you remember we went to invoice model here and we looked at the standard PEPAL sales invoice. So let's say I want to actually edit it and change something. Then I would place myself here on the PEPAL sales. I would create a new configuration. And here you can select derive from, just ensuring that you select the right one. And I can do my own. I just did one, but let's do another one just to be explanatory here. I have my own provider. I can choose the same model that's using. I can then go to create configuration. It will create a new format, which is a copy, or it derives from, but it is also a copy from the PEPL format. Hopefully it doesn't take too long. I still need to be mindful of my minutes here. I did prepare one that's called just the 365 Bootcamp, but it's more fun to do it live. Yeah, here it is. So, and here, if I go into my designer, and if I go down to my little invoice line ID that I just showed you, need to look at the mapping. And here you will see this. So back to the low code, no code. You can work with formulas here. And this is low code. It's not really coding, but it can be very complicated. It's important to understand this is a specific language. It's fairly well explained. But for this particular case, I can just do this. And then I can test my expression. I save it first, of course. I can test my expression. And if I pass then a value, it will evaluate and I will get the value back without decimals. So now I'm happy. The recipients of my invoice are happy because they no longer get decimals. And once it's saved, I can also publish the format, or I can complete the format, really. And it's a lot of details going into the ER, like working with formats and repositories. I don't have time now to show you all of that, but basically, once I'm done here, I can change the status to completed. And once it's completed, I can upload it into my repository on Dataverse side, which will either automatically create a solution there, or you already have a solution there for your formats. And the proper way of maintaining your formats across environments is doing exactly that, importing it to Dataverse, then doing a life cycle of moving those solutions into higher environment tiers, repositories. And then in those environments, you would go in and you would go to your repository and import it back in. You can also do it the poor man way. Sometimes you have to do that and resort back to exporting. I can go here. If I'm done, I can export my format as an XML. I have to complete it first, but once it's completed, I can export it as an XML, download it, go to different environment, and then import it. But then you need to have all the validations and all the prerequisites in place. But it's that easy. You can start off from having a base Microsoft format, derive from it, and then you can work with your design format, and you can add mappings to whatever is in the model. And if you need to extend the model, then you do the same in the invoice model. You create a new model and a new model mapping, and then you need to tie those to your format. So going back to one of my first pictures here, it's important to understand how the data flows if you want to tweak these things, because sometimes you want to add stuff that's not in the model. Then you need to map it towards the correct data source. But that's a very more technical deep dive of the solution. So let's go back and see if I can wrap it up in how to thrive after go live. So our mission was to enable e-invoicing in a standard fashion or e-invoicing fashion. So we've done that. Let's just say we use e-invoicing add-in to deliver it to our customers. Now we need to monitor that the daily posting, the daily sending of our e-invoices is working as it should. So you saw the electronic reporting jobs. That is an excellent place to look at. It contains all the ER jobs. So if you have payment files, you will see them here as well. Here you can monitor that the job ran and that the delivery to whatever destination that you set up has worked. So it has done its job. I usually set up print archive as a means to kind of see, okay, did the posting and the printing work? Because if the posting and printing worked, it should have fired away. At least then I don't have to worry about the invoicing batch job. It can still go wrong, of course, down the line. If you have e-invoice, you can use the submission log I just showed you. That's a much better tool, to be honest, but you only get it if you activate the e-invoice. So you can't use ER with the submission log, unfortunately. But this one is much better because then you have failed status you can rerun and retry, and you have duplicate prevention and stuff. But again, if you use integration, then you need to use logic apps or APIM or something to log, okay, there was a file, I picked it up and I delivered it to the destination. And in the end, you also need to maintain your EDI broker. They can send you some reports. There are many brokers that have excellent APIs to get, like, to pass back to Dynamics that the actual invoice was received by them and delivered to the customer, making for great monitoring purposes. Checking your batch jobs, it's always important, but it's important to remember that it's a chain of events that you need to be mindful about. Azure Telemetry is also great. Yeah, using application insights, you can build rules there to kind of track issues with your batch jobs and your deliveries. But as soon as it's out and at your broker, then you need to ensure that they can either report back or you have some other way of doing it. Quickly onboarding. Check with your broker and ensure that your customers, that they reach out to you if you can enable e-invoice or not. But usually EDI brokers are very good to see, okay, you have customers with this and this organizational number. They are in this register over here, so they should be able to use e-invoice. You can also search online using your customers' data and be proactive. Many customers like that vendors reach out and say, hey, I see you can use e-invoice. Do you want me to onboard you? That's a very helpful thing. Okay, so these are the links. I will share them in the chat, unless I think we'll also share the PowerPoint presentation afterwards, hopefully, Raz. Remember to look at the coming dates of the bootcamp. Thank you, everyone, for listening, and thank you to the sponsors, and thank you to Raz, of course, for setting this up. I haven't looked at any Q&A here. I have 2 minutes left, so let's see if we can go from this top. There's a lot of questions.
You're muted, Raz.
Thank you so much, Gustav. Yes, as you can see, Gustav, there's tons of questions in there for you. A lot of interest. And to be honest, it's one of those features where, it's one of those bleeding edge features which most of us have not been able to use yet. So there's a lot of interest and curiosity around that, Gustav. So really appreciate you doing a presentation on this topic today. A lot of interest. As you can see, there's lots of questions in there, but we've run out of time.
Sorry.
If you don't mind, Gustav, are you able to respond to those questions in the Q&A
sure.
section as we introduce our next speaker?
Absolutely.
Thank you so much,
I will
Gustav.
answer them in text. Thank you so much. Thank you for listening. Thanks for having me here.
Yeah, awesome session. Absolutely fantastic session, guys. So thank you once again, Gustav. Huge round of applause for Gustav, guys. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Take care. Good.
Thank you. Thank you, Gustav. Okay. So a lot of you have been waiting for our next speaker, joining all the way from USA, from Sweden to USA. So without further ado, let's introduce Brittany Burke. Hello there, Brittany.
Hello, how are you?
Hello, Brittany. Excellent. Yes, we've all been waiting for you today. I think there's been a lot of interest in your session, and so yes. So thank you for joining us all the way from USA. Brittany, are you able to test your screen share? We've had a few technical glitches today, so we just want to make sure that you're able to share your screen. Fantastic, Brittany. So Brittany, yeah, so we can see your screen, we can hear you. Just to give a bit of background, so our attendees, that they've been taken from kind of introduction into F&O, and we've slowly been going deep dive into the various features of F&O. And now we're at a very important topic, which is basically the heart of F&O. Without further ado, it is a huge pleasure to host Brittany Burke, all the way from the USA. Thank you, Brittany, for joining us. Over to you.
All right, thanks so much, Roz. So thanks everyone for joining. So we'll be talking about navigating financial transactions and posting profiles in D365. I find the topic of finance and posting profiles riveting. My background is in accounting. So a little bit about me. This'll work. There we go. I'm a principal solutions architect at a company called Calf to Code. I run a local user group in Florida here in the United States. However, it is virtual. So regardless of where you are in the world, you can join. We have people from Australia, the UK, joining us monthly. So if you follow me on LinkedIn, there's a QR code on this slide if you're interested in connecting. I do post any meetups that we are having coming up on my LinkedIn, so you can join in if you'd like, and we always record them and have them posted out on YouTube. I'm a Microsoft MVP, And I do run a blog called D365 with Brittany. All right, so a quick little agenda of what we're going to cover today. Some of these topics I could probably talk about for several hours. However, we only have an hour together, so some of them may not be as deep of a dive as I would love to do. But if you have any questions, I'm happy to connect afterward or talk through anything in more detail if it makes more sense. So we'll talk through GL impacts throughout the transaction lifecycle and how that relates to posting profiles, and then different ways to research financial transactions in the system. And then sprinkled in throughout are some tips and tricks of how to utilize D365 better, how to make it more personal to you, and how to do your job more efficiently. All right, so the GL impacts throughout the transaction lifecycle. So this one's a fun one. So not every step and not every mouse click that you do in an operational process, such as creating a purchase order or a sales order, creates a voucher transaction. If we look at the top line here, we have, if you create the purchase order, nothing hits the GL. If I confirm the purchase order, nothing hits the GL. If I register the purchase order, nothing hits the GL. If I receive the purchase order, maybe something hits the GL. There's some parameters in item model group or item groups, which determine whether or not you will accrue inventory and posting. So that's where our dotted lines are going to come in. It may or it may not. Now, regardless of how our receiving or on the sales order side, posting a packing slip impacts the GL, when we create a pending invoice on the purchase order side, it again does not hit the GL. It doesn't say, hey, accrued invoice. It just sits out there until we post it. And then posting the purchase order invoice or the sales order invoice will also result in an impact to the GL. So long story short, not every single mouse click in the system creates a general journal entry or a general ledger entry. Some can, some always do, but there are some configurations you may need to consider, especially around receiving purchase orders and posting packing slips for sales orders that will determine if there's an impact to the GL and then the subsequent posting when you get to the invoicing process. But this is all directly tied to posting profiles, which a lot of people, I've been asked, what are posting profiles? I feel like we throw these terms around. Sometimes in your implementations, you'll hear, oh, the posting profile is just wrong. Just wrong. It's just wrong. Well, there's a lot that goes just wrong with a posting profile, so it's never something simple. So to first understand posting profiles, we have to talk about posting types. So a posting type defines the main account related to a specific transactional step. So posting a purchase order invoice, posting a sales order invoice. A single voucher will have more than one posting type. So if you ever look at a transaction behind posting a sales order invoice, you'll notice there's a lot of different posting types on there. Some posting types are used more than once throughout the transaction life cycle, whereas others are only used once. So if you have accrued inventory on a product receipt, when you invoice that purchase order, it's no longer accrued inventory, it's posted inventory. So depending upon the way things are configured, you may use some of those multiple times. And it generally controls how the subledger accounts are then converted to the main accounts for transaction purposes. If your posting profiles are out of alignment, this is where you're going to see that your subledger and your general ledger do not agree. Specifically with inventory related transactions. So posting profiles are the combination of or collection of posting types for a specific transactional element. So for an item, for a customer, or for a vendor. So an item or an item group could have a specific posting profile saying everything that applies in this group. So all of my, let's say, electronic inventory, all of that has its own posting profile, but it's composed of many different posting types, which are the different components, and we'll kind of talk about this in a few minutes. Your posting profiles can be as specific or as general as needed, and I'll illustrate that here in a few minutes as well. And then the level of specificity can vary from one posting profile to another. So maybe for items, it's pretty vague, whereas for customers, it's very granular. Usually it's the opposite, but it can be set up as any way that's needed. So we're going to kind of come back to the same illustration that we had. So what drives how these dotted and solid lines impact the GL are those posting profiles. Now, if anyone has ever had the unfortunate pleasure of trying to post an invoice or a product receipt, and you get that little pop-up that says, you know, posting type not defined, that's why. Because it doesn't know where to put it in the general ledger because you don't have something defined in your configuration of your posting profiles. So where do we find posting profiles? Here are some common areas you might find them. These are really well documented out on Microsoft Learn, where they do talk about some of the posting profiles in a little bit more depth of what each one does. But I have found that finding and maintaining posting profiles until you get really familiar with them is somewhere between a game of whack-a-mole and Where's Waldo. You don't necessarily know which one it is intuitively. Sometimes the names don't really give you exactly what you're looking for. So sometimes you have to really do some digging. There's a lot of great forums out there if you put the specific error message you're getting related to a posting profile, where people have answered on forums, blogs, you know, various other platforms online where they'll actually say, hey, it's this posting profile. And those are some really great resources that I would definitely recommend of searching those error messages. But once you start to get the hang of it, you start to learn a little bit more. Inventory posting is probably one of the ones that I see have the most problems when people are going live. It's definitely one that has a lot of moving pieces and can get very overly complicated very quickly. So let's look at the anatomy of a posting profile. So I have on here vendor posting profile. So this is for setting up your vendors. On the left-hand side, on the right-hand side, I have your inventory posting profile. So they do look different across the system, but you can see how they basically have the same components. So the first piece is our posting types. So these are like when you're looking at voucher transactions, you'll see these specific values in there. Now, sometimes commas get lost when it's translated onto other screens. So be a little cautious of that. I have seen that happen in a few instances. But these are going to be those posting types where at each one you're defining a main account. So then we have our codes. So we have on the vendor side, we have what's called account code. And on the item side, we have what's called item code. I call them type codes. And this is just the grouping to determine the specificity of the posting type usage. So if you have this set to, and this is from the most specific to least specific, is table. If you have it set to table, and we can see that here on the vendor side, we have a table with an account or a group number. That's going to be the most specific. So you're identifying that this posting type has this main account for a singular item number, a singular vendor, a single project category, or a single customer. Let's go down a level. And if we use group, so we can see that here on the inventory side, this would be by item group or vendor group, customer group, any of your groupings that you would naturally have in the system. And then we have all, which I think is probably my favorite to use, which is just that catch-all bucket for if the transaction does not meet one of the more specific criteria. When the system's evaluating which main account to use for a specific posting type, it's going to try to match at the most granular level. So if we're talking about inventory, it's going to try to match by that item number, and then it's going to try to go by the item group. And then when all else fails, it's going to go to all. One downfall I have seen in posting profile setup, and what I would caution anyone that's setting these up for the first time, is only use group or table when there is an exception. Try to see, does everything fit into all, and maybe we have a few exceptions. Once you start getting into setting up every single item by itself, so as you're setting up a new item, you have to add each one. One of two things generally happen. Well, three things could happen. One, it can go perfectly right. I know everyone's on mute, but I can feel a couple people laughing. That does not always happen. If you've ever worked with posting profiles, you know that somebody will just randomly put something in and it'll post to that main account, and then you have a mess on your hands. The second thing that can happen is they don't put anything. And if you don't have an all bucket defined, as soon as you try to post a transaction, error message, you can't post it. The third issue is it's a lot of maintenance. You have a lot of people that are coming in and setting up, and maybe they're all set to the main account. That's ideal, right? But why should you set it up so granular when you can set it up at that all level, or even the group level in a worst case scenario? Maintenance wise, it's a lot easier. So if all of a sudden you have to change where your inventory receipts are going, you have to update one line rather than, let's say you have 20,000 items, 20,000 times. So it's always helpful, in my opinion, to set it up as generically or as simply as possible, just to minimize downstream impacts and issues. So the next area is the relation. So item relation, account relation. This, again, from table being the most specific to all being generic, not having a specific value defined. It won't even let you define a value. This is where you'll define those groupings you want to use by table, group, or all. And then finally, your main accounts. So if we look on our inventory side, we can see that people were doing different groups, and maybe it makes sense to have different groups hit different accounts. But in my experience, when I see a 1-5 starting with a main account, but everything else starts with a 1-4, that's going to raise some red flags. Somebody might have put in a main account, typed the wrong number in. Maybe they meant to type the same as one of the first ones of 140,100. But we're humans, we make errors, and they typed 1501, and I don't remember what account that was off the top of my head, but if that's retained earnings, you don't want your inventory receipts going to retained earnings. So there are some scenarios where you need to make sure that these are all in alignment. So I normally pose a question. I know everyone's on mute, but just kind of think to yourself, who should own the maintenance of posting profiles? This is something that I have seen debated so much. I've asked this question to many different groups, and many people will say either finance or operations. The finance people are very passionate that the operations team should handle it, but the operations team wants nothing to do with it. They're like, that's finance. I really don't care how it posts to the general ledger. That's your job. So the answer is not one or the other. It's both. So you have to have an alignment between your finance teams and your operational teams to make sure that the way things are impacting your general ledger is accurate. And it's also important that at the end of each step of your operational process that those GL impacts make sense. Also, having the correct operational processes is just as important as the correct financial configuration. You're like, Brittany, what do you mean? If you're doing a production order and you don't finish your production orders at the end of each month and things sit in WIP or work in progress, if you're not having WIP hit the correct account, it may skew your financial reporting and not make any sense to anyone. I've seen that a lot of times. So making sure not only at the end of the entire life cycle of that one transaction does the GL impact make sense, but at the end of each individual step that does a mouse click. And by mouse click, I mean walking through it. And remember those dotted lines and those solid lines? Those are where those GL impacts will need to make sure that they're aligned and make sense. So again, a question I love to ask is how many people can honestly answer when estimated manufactured cost is triggered at what step in D365 does it actually hit the GL? Well, it's triggered first when you have a report as finished journal and that's posted. And then it's hitting again when you're ending a production order. It is not something that many people would know off the top of their head. If they do, they've probably fixed this posting profile. But for the most part, if you look at the list of posting types, rather, you're not going to intuitively know when it's triggered. Some do make a little sense. Some of them, it to me does not make sense sometimes. I'm like, okay, I know it uses this one, but I would have called it something different. So, and then also knowing when is it a debit or a credit. So it's a debit when the report is finished journal is posted, and then it's a credit when you end the production order. But again, if you're just setting this up and going, well, I think it hits at this stage, because remember, we're going to have multiple posting types at each step. So you might have other transactions, you don't want them all to wipe each other out and have a net impact of 0 at your GL for that step. So making sure you understand where they're hitting and when they're hitting are equally important. So there's a process that I've kind of started using when I'm trying to evaluate, are my posting types correct? And I've kind of coined it operational process mapping. It is not an official name of anything, but I find it to be a really helpful process when I'm trying to determine why things are not hitting the GL properly. So why is it important? To make sure that we're using the correct posting types and that the GL impacts align with what we're expecting. So a few things of how do you start this? What do you do? One, only play around with posting profiles and seeing what needs to change in a non-production environment. I have seen too many people go, oh, let's just change this and see what happens in production. Spoiler alert, it never goes well. In a nutshell, it never goes well. And I have controlled here. What do you mean by controlled? Controlled meaning there's no one else in the system also changing posting profiles. You want to make sure you're accounting for every change as you're going through your testing. Identify all of your key business processes that rely on posting profiles to determine your GL impact. Pretty much anything that has a financial impact other than a journal. a general journal is going to impact your GL from a posting profile, even customer payment journals. Map each process step by step, posting by posting. Focus not only on the process, but the specific order of operations. This is super important because sometimes you will have teams that do things out of order, and it can impact how things are posting if you set them up a certain way and expect it to clear after a specific step in one main account. If they do it out of order, it may not clear. And then note any deviations or once in a blue moon out of order scenarios that happen. So maybe occasionally something goes wrong and you know it, why it happens or how it happens. Make sure you're planning for that. So the first step that I like to encourage people to do is to start by mapping your operational process to posting types. So this is your do a click, check the GL. Do a click, check the GL. It's very repetitive, but you want to capture any voucher transactions that are created and associate it with a specific action that you're taking. So if we go back to our original example, that's going to be when I post a product receipt or purchase order receipt and when I invoice my purchase order. So yes, you may go through and say, okay, I'm going to create my purchase order. If you don't know that there's no GL impact and you go and say, okay, are there any ledger transactions that have happened? Nope. Okay, moving on. So once you get through that whole process, you want to validate that the financial impacts align with expectations. So use your finance team looking at it and saying, okay, at the end of purchase order receipt, I would expect balances to sit in this account and this account. Okay, does it? Are they debits when they should be debits? Are they credits when they should be credits? And then again, at the end of the overall process, do they align with where we're expecting those balances to sit? If I've received inventory in, did I increase my inventory account? If I received inventory in and our inventory account did not go up as a result of the transaction, you probably have a problem, which is where you will start looking at your posting types and aligning them to those changes. So that's where our first step of mapping posting types to steps is important, because those posting types are where you're going to know what posting types you have to change the main account on. And maybe you find that it was set up at the table level and you have a specific item that doesn't align with what you want. And that was the one you happen to choose for testing. And then you'll know that's the one you need to update. And then you are going to rinse and repeat as many times as it takes for that process to be aligning with your financial impacts. Don't just change your posting profile and be like, okay, I'm good. Make sure you just at least repeat that test at least once, just to make sure it didn't kind of mess something up downstream. I have seen that happen before, specifically with production orders, where, especially if it's used more than once, you want to make sure that things still flow and you don't then create an issue further downstream. And I do have an entire deep dive on this process on my blog if you're interested, or you can reach out and I can point you in the direction of that. But it is something that I personally use anytime someone says, hey, this does not post to the GL correctly. I go through this process. Even if I think I know what it is, I use this process. I use T accounts. I go completely nerdy with accounting and use all of my accounting tools to make sure that I can explain it to the finance team of what the fix is. So a few key takeaways from posting profiles. Please, 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 please do not blindly accept prepackaged or pre-designed posting profile configuration. Many companies or partners have the best intentions with these. However, your business model may be slightly different. You may do things a little bit differently than others. So please always test them before you put them in a production environment I'll probably say that a million more times, but don't blindly accept them because everybody else does it this way. Not everybody needs the same configuration. Time spent to walk through these processes and map and document the GL results is time saved. If you do this, say you haven't gone live yet, and you do this process, and let's say it takes you 2 hours, that is probably more than 20 hours saved of fixing problems down the line. If you don't have to fix problems, your auditors won't come and ask you about those issues. Consider security to ensure consistency and preventing unwanted changes. Perhaps on items, perhaps on vendors. Don't allow users to enter posting profiles if they're setting up new items. It probably doesn't need to be done. So if you do have a lot of changes that are happening, you may need to look at security first and remove the ability for people to change them unless they know what they're doing. That's usually the number one reason things go awry, is somebody just didn't know any better. And they're just like, oh, I have to fill this in. Of course, it has to hit the GL somewhere, but they inadvertently add additional configuration that you don't need. Also, design change management for dealing with posting profile changes. I highly recommend this. Auditors can sniff out posting profile changes. I don't know what it is about them, but they will find them, ask them why it changed, especially if it's as a result of a correction. So if you do have to make corrections after the fact, document them and save them, because an auditor will ask for it. So do your future self a favor and document things and save them. All right. So jumping into researching transactions, and this is where you may find that your posting profiles have gone awry. So there's a few different ways to research transactions. So the first kind of grouping that I'll talk about is at voucher transactions. You can do this from any transactional form. The one I'm showing you right now is inventory management. Under inquiries and reports, transactions, so invent trans, for anybody that calls it that still, I still do. If you go to the ledger tab at the top, you then can look at your vouchers. You can look at your physical and your financial voucher. So your physical voucher would be your product receipt or your packing slip. So when you've removed stuff out of inventory physically. And then your financial voucher will be when it was invoiced or finalized. So when it financially impacted the GL fully to remove it from inventory. Similarly, you can basically do the same thing on all production orders. If you're looking at your managed cost tab, you get the same navigation path where you can look into the voucher transactions for any of the lines in there. You can also just generally get to voucher transactions in the general ledger module under general ledger, inquiries and reports, and then voucher transactions. Once you open that, you're going to get this lovely screen where you can put in multiple criteria. Now, talking about the operational process mapping, I just kind of walked you through. This is where I would just put my date in. If I'm the only one in the environment testing stuff, I'm just going to use today's date and then start tracking those vouchers from there. Well, let's say you do have a voucher number. Maybe your controller sent you a number and they want to know what happened. They want more information about it. You can just put that in your criteria field. You could have ranges and all of that. So we're going to hit OK, and that's going to pop up my voucher transactions and details. So our voucher transactions are going to show us a lot of different information. We're going to have our ledger account with any financial dimension strings, our currency, our amount in transaction currency, and then amount in reporting currency. My example, US dollars is both the reporting and transaction currency, but you could have different values if you're transacting in one and reporting in another. And further down on the screen, it's not in the screenshot, would be where your posting types would live, so you could research from there. If you click on original document, this is one of my favorite buttons. I have a lot of favorite buttons, so I may say that about all of them, but this is one of my favorites. Under original document, if you open this up, it'll pop out. Well, it doesn't really pop out like AX 2012 did, but it'll open into this screen where you can see where this transaction originated. So we can see that it was a purchase invoice with this document number USMF 0000489. If I want to look deeper, if I want to drill in deeper, that doesn't give me what I was looking for. I can click on my view details and it'll take me into that original document. It'll open up that purchase invoice. My next favorite one, I don't know if these are in the order of which I like them the best, but one of the ones I like is the posted sales tax. One downside, I think, is that when you have posted sales tax, it uses a different voucher number, which can be confusing because you're like, I posted this, where's the tax? It's a different voucher number. So if you want to see your posted sales tax, you can click on that and it'll open up your voucher with all of the different sales tax codes that are applicable to the transaction that you created. The next one that I think is underrated, not used as much, is related vouchers. So in this scenario, I had a payment that was applied, but I had a cash discount on that payment. Well, it looks to me like I only applied that full amount, but I'm like, well, what happened to the cash discount? Where did that go? If I click on related vouchers, I will see that I have a different voucher number for that cash discount that was posted at $54.90. I can then jump into all related vouchers, which I typically kind of jump into that one first instead of related vouchers. And I can then see both my payment information and then that discount both in one screen. So we have all of our voucher numbers in one screen. This one is one of my favorites because this is a question that you get asked a lot. Well, what that wasn't the full amount of the invoice. Well, no, it wasn't. But if you add them together, the impact to the 200100 accounts payable domestic account is higher than it looks like if you look at the one voucher. Audit trail. So this one helps me out a lot. Sometimes, if you've ever noticed, if you change a configuration or things just don't look quite right, it's an order of operations. If you were like, well, I posted this journal entry, why isn't it, in there, or it wasn't there earlier, what happened? It's already backdated. I don't understand. Well, if you click on audit trail, you can see who created it and what day it was created and time. This is not when the journal itself was created. This is when the voucher was created. So if I'm like, well, why is my balance from, January 31st of 2016 wrong? Well, because somebody in May of 2017 made a journal entry. Well, maybe they typed the wrong year in. Who knows? Somebody did something weird. But you can track it down and know, oh, I ran my report at 2 o'clock. Oh, well, somebody made a change after 2 o'clock, so that's why my report is different from what it was previously. So here's one of my favorite tips or function. It helps a lot when you're researching a transaction to be able to make a note of what it was once you've spent the time researching it and you're like, oh, that's what this was for, because you didn't put a description on the original journal entry. You do have the ability to edit the internal voucher description, so this description that shows up in voucher transactions, even though the transaction has been posted. This is newer-ish. I say newer-ish because it's been within the last 2 years that it came out. If you're using any sort of custom security, you probably do not know that it exists. It's assigned to the accounting manager and the accounting supervisor out of the box roles, but you can easily grab those duties or privileges and add them to any custom roles to open up this functionality for your team. So if we want to edit that internal voucher data, we click on Edit Voucher and then Edit Internal Voucher Data. And it's going to open up a screen where we have a few things we need to do. If we wanted to bulk select a bunch of records, we could select multiple and they would live in this screen, and then we could mark them and click bulk update selected records and change the description on multiple records at once to be the same description. Or we can go line by line and enter the new description. So you would have your current description, if there is one, and a new description that you can enter. You can also, it's not required, but you can enter a reason for edit. So perhaps you write, I researched this because there was a question, this is what it was for, updating the description to not have to research it in the future, whatever reason you might edit that. Once you save it and hit OK, you'll notice then your description shows up in your description box. Now, this does not mean if you had a previous description there that it goes away. You do have the ability to look at the audit trail of any voucher edits that have been made. If I click my audit trail, you'll see that I can say, okay, Brittany modified it, that was me, in May of 2023. And if I had a reason for edit, it would have it here. If I click into the created date time, so see how it's blue with the hyperlink, if I click into that, it'll pop up the properties so I can see my previous description and my new description. So if I want to know what it was previously, if an auditor asks, honestly, if anybody asks, you could go in here and look at that history. So, researching inventory transactions. I spend a lot of time here. Inventory transactions, I think I said this earlier, are one of the biggest things that hit the GL wrong, which cause questions and concerns. And honestly, a lot of time is spent researching these transactions. So if you wanted to, you can go to inventory management, inquiries and reports, and then transactions. If you've been like me and you've ever just tried to search for a page for inventory transactions, nothing comes up. For whatever reason, this is just called transactions, or affectionately known as InventTrans if you've worked with it enough. So there's a lot of information we can get from the inventory transaction screen. One thing I usually always start with is filtering to whatever transaction I am looking for, just because I don't want to look at everything. I just want to look at whatever I'm having an issue with. So if I'm having an issue with a specific number or item number, a specific order, specific lot ID, I can do all of that. One thing I do like to do, is kind of a tip mixed in here with everything, is using advanced filtering. I don't think a lot of people use it as much as I do, but I'm one of those people, if I filter one column and I'm scrolling across, I'll forget I had already filtered something, and then I remove a filter and I'm like, oh my gosh, where did everything go? 9 times out of 10, it's because I have way too many filtered fields. So I like to use the advanced filters so I know exactly which filters I have applied, so I can minimize my having to go out and restart my entire research process because I forgot I had filtered an item field or a date field. You can add additional fields as needed, so that you can look into multiple fields. So if you hit add, and you can add additional filter fields there. I think it's my next one. Nope, it'll come up shortly. But you can add any fields that make sense to you to help you research whatever issue you're having a problem with. Oh yeah, this one. You can do the same thing, adding stuff to the grid. So you can filter on it. So you're going to hit your 3 dot. It's like a vertical ellipse. I have nicknamed it Fred the Snowman affectionately because I can't call it a hamburger button because that button's in the top right corner or top left corner. So this is Fred the Snowman. He lives on your form pages that you can filter. I'll do insert columns and insert the columns that I need. Now, I have found that these are fields that I typically insert every single time I'm trying to research an inventory transaction, so I always think they're worth calling out. You have your physical cost amount, your financial cost amount, any adjustments, so that's going to be any inventory adjustments, whether that's from recalculation, close, settlement, or inventory adjustments. Value open. If you're not familiar with this, this is going to tell you if that inventory transaction is subject to additional adjustments or still needs to be settled, which means that your financial cost amount is not settled. It's just an estimate. Lot ID, because that's how we have to modify our costing if we have to do any adjustments. And then our physical and financial voucher numbers. Throw this one in here. If your value open says yes, and you go into inventory closing an adjustment and make an adjustment, there is a very high likelihood that the next time you run recalculation, the adjustment you just made is going to go away. So typically, I always say to watch that. Usually if its value open is no, and it's fully settled, you can easily make those adjustments to get your financial cost where you need it without the fear of your adjustment getting wiped out. I have seen someone make several hundred adjustments to inventory value because something was priced incorrectly. And well, let's just say those values were all open and they had to repeat that process and they were not happy about it. So keep that in mind when you are doing any inventory adjustments, if you do have to do that as a result of your research. I also love to add in my column totals. Again, this is newer-ish for some additional abilities to do average, maximum, and minimum. But this is enhanced in 10.0.32. I know we just came out with 42, so about 10 versions ago. But again, a lot of people aren't used to the functionality, so I like to call it out. If you are selecting multiple rows or filtering your data, it'll actually update those average, minimum, maximum, and sum based on the values selected. So if you're not wanting to see the value for everything, it does change that a little bit. But sum is my go-to column total if I'm trying to figure things out. All right. And I think this one is worth noting. When I research transactions, I'm adding a lot of columns. I'm adding a lot of sums and groupings in my grid. I always say this one because I have mentioned saved views and I've gotten blank stares from many people. Come to find out, somebody had been adding the same 16 columns to their form every day, multiple times a day. And I said, why? And they're like, well, because I need them. But they did not know that they could save their view. So once you add all of the columns in that you want, put filters that make sense to you. You can do your drop down from standard view, click save as, put a new view name in here. It's going to default to like my view 1 or something like that. You can put a description in as well. So if you have multiple saved views and you're like, this is the best view for researching, adjustments on, value open or something, you can put that in there. And then you have the option to pin it as your default view or leave it as just one you can select if you needed. If you pin it as your default view every time you open up that form, it will bring you back into that view by default. So one thing to keep in mind before you save a view, if you, like I did, had the item number filtered, you may want to remove any filters that don't make sense to save in your view before you do save that view. You can also set it up for specific legal entities if you want it to be your default view for, let's say, USMF. You can do that and then have a different view for any other legal entities as it makes sense. But this is something that, again, I highly recommend. You can use this on any screen in the system, but I use them a lot in inventory transactions and general ledger transactions just to make sure that I am getting the values that I need to speed up my research. So that's all I have. I really wish I could have gone into a lot more detail on posting profiles and that whole operational process mapping process with T accounts, but we probably would have been here for another hour, and I don't think Ross would have wanted me to go completely over my time. But if you do have questions about that, I do have resources I can point you in the direction of, or get that information to you. If you do have questions, feel free to reach out either via email. My blog has another email on it, LinkedIn, however it makes sense for you, and I can get you the information that you need. But I am always available for questions, especially geeky financial ones, because those are my happy place and what I love to do. So thanks, everyone. And again, thanks to all of our sponsors for this wonderful event.
Thank you so much, Brittany. Wow. So that really helped to tie up some of the loose ends in the boot camp today. And you really went into detail, Brittany, covering a complex topic. So we really appreciate your time today on covering posting profiles and transactions within F&O. So excellent. Okay. So everyone, you know what to do. Follow Brittany. Reach out to Brittany. Brittany's doing lots of user groups as well. So please follow Brittany on LinkedIn. Follow her on the user groups. The aspects that Brittany are covering for, that tends to cover it definitely are the topics that are going to be real world challenges of users using the application, right? Versus an implementation. So Brittany, you add a lot of value to the community with your contributions, and thank you once again for joining us all the way from the USA.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Excellent. And don't forget to share the link to your user group as well, Brittany. I will try and dig it out, but if you've got it, it'll be great to share it so that the community can carry on learning and joining your user group as well. That'd be fantastic. Excellent.
Absolutely. I do have a session that we're having later this month. So that's going to be on my LinkedIn probably in the next day or two. So if everyone checks out my LinkedIn, they'll be able to find that as well.
There you go, guys. So follow Brittany on LinkedIn. Fantastic. Thank you once again, Brittany. Okay, I can see Alireza online. I can see him. Fantastic, Alireza. So you are the final session of the day. Excellent.
Yes.
So
hopefully, yeah.
Yeah, definitely. So the final session of the day on an important topic of electronic reporting. It was great to see how the variations between Gustav's obviously invoicing session and yours, which is more focused on the reporting aspect. So without further ado, Alireza, I'd like to hand over to yourself.
Thank you so much. So first of all, I try to just share my screen. So if you can just give me a hint, if you can see my screen.
Yes, we can.
Yes, great. It's my pleasure to presenting today in the Global Dynamics 365 Bootcamp. And first of all, I thank you, Raz, and all of the team today that have presented so far, from Ramit, Billur, Andre, Raz, and Brittany, Gustav. So they have provided a good conceptual view on the Dynamics 365. So it was very good to end it up today's bootcamp with electronic reporting and business documents. So basically, today I will talk about what is electronic reporting. Thanks to Gustav, so he has already delivered some concept about electronic reporting, but I try to have a more deeper view and about this framework. And then we go through the core capabilities and components, and then we will open the door for business documents and how it can be used as a great tool in the output as output management. In this scenario, I will have a short live demo to better investigate how we can take advantage of this great tool. And at last, we have room for the questions, and we have a detailed also analysis on the pros and cons. So feel free to have your question here. So in the Teams, or if you have any questions, so you can just use the Scan Me or just write your question in the Finance and Operations Forums community. So we will answer there. So before I start, I just start with a short introduction about myself. My name is Alireza. So basically, I'm working from Norway, and I have expertise in the Microsoft Dynamics 365, finance and operation, in the data management, and nowadays morely in the electronic reporting and business documents. I, as other great contributors to the Microsoft Finance community, I try to be active contributor there, as our legends Andre. So I try to be also active there. So if there is any questions there, so I will be happy to follow up, because it's a arena that we can just share our knowledge and also learn from each other. And my commitment is I'm very hardcore fan of using the standard functions, so specifically to automate them in finance and operations. And from my background, I have a background in the production management, industrial economics, and I have also a personal blog which called dinfotech.com. So in a case that you need to have a better understanding over the financials and tax transactions, everything with the business document, electronic reporting, e-invoice, so you can just take a look on my blog. Yes. So basically, I just think that today, the target audiences can be everyone that wants or working with the finance and operations, from functional to the developer, or those who are interested to know how they can take advantage of finance and operations standard functions. As a first slide, so I just come back to the autonomous finance, which is the roadmap from the Microsoft that are investing in all going to occur to this over time. So in this picture, we see that the Copilot has already added to finance and operations in all of the functions almost. But if you see here, there is globalization, regulatory compliance, and tax automation. So this part is basically our focus today, that we are talking about a motor or a framework in finance and operations that Microsoft has designed basically to satisfy the globalization needs or the local functions that can be delivered as a feature or can be delivered as a configuration in finance and operations. So basically, knowing about electronic reporting is quietly important, and it's in the roadmap of the Microsoft, specifically for those that comes from the AX or the older version of the finance, the products, AX 2012 or 2009. So it's very good to have a better understanding over this great standard tool. So we just come up with the question here: what is electronic reporting? In a nutshell, electronic reporting is a framework, standard framework, that is designed for integrations and for the output management. So it means that it is a standard tool which Microsoft has been prepared either for integrated to the external sources to import or export data, or you can just use it as an output management, just export the data and visualize it in a specific format that you want. So recently, Microsoft has more investment also in the electronic reporting, basically in the regulatory reports, the reports that needs to be sent directly from the finance and operation, for example, to the government. A good example for that is a tax report for some countries that is already has been assigned that you need to send the report directly from the finance or ERP solution to the tax administration. A good example for that is the HMRC, which is a tax report for the UK, or the NI-melding, or with the Norway tax return that needs to be sent directly from finance and operation to the tax administration web services. So everything here has been designed, the whole process via electronic reporting. So electronic reporting here is the motor to generate the file, send the file, get the message, or give us a feedback that the file has been delivered, or give us a feedback if the file has been failed. So basically, knowing about the electronic reporting can give you a competitive advantage about how you can take advantage of standard functions or better or efficiently using finance and operations in both implementation and supporting phases. So basically, if I want to say that why we need to use the electronic reporting, so it is the correct, or let us say it is the one of the standard tools that Microsoft has designed for the regulatory and electronic reporting, especially for the payments. When it comes to the payment generation file, send the file to the bank, import the file from the bank, or generate the e-invoice file and send it directly to the access point in finance and operation. In order to have better overview of what can electronic reporting in the terms of regulatory reports deliver, I just have mentioned some of the most used reports per today that is often used by the customers as standard to transmit with the external sources, or as a regulatory report that one ERP solutions needs to deliver. So first of all is ISO 222, which is a standard for the bank integration. So per today, from customer credit transfer or the payment file to the customer to the bank statement can be imported via electronic reporting. So the configuration has been created through that it can import the file, get the files, and then import it directly to the entity, because it's through the electronic reporting you have access to export data to the entities, tables, and also export the data. I will have a closer look soon about this. And to the PeppleBeast 3.0, which Gustav already has talked about, which Microsoft already has delivered these formats for Norway, because some countries already has started this journey from 2016 in Norway. So most of the companies has the mandatory to use the electronic invoices or electronic invoices since 2017, and almost it is mandatory for every company from 2019. So here in Norway we have a good experience using this functionality in both the older versions of Finance and Operations AX and in this new one. I also have created a bunch of cases for the Microsoft to develop the configuration based on the Pepple requirements, because it's just changing. So Microsoft also creates also new versions each time that there is a need to cover the changes or modifications from the Pepple side. Then we can talk about the SAFT. So if SAFT is a standard audit file for taxes, which has been already started to be used as the export of the ledger trans called in Lithuania, Norway, and Denmark, and it is also in the roadmap on some other European country to use it as a standard format to export the data from the ERP solution and deliver it to the tax administration. And so-called the tax declaration, if you see in the Microsoft repositories, so in the Dataverse repositories correctly called, so there is already Microsoft has created VAT declaration in the Excel and XML, and for some country in the text and JSON format that can be used as a part of integrations that Microsoft has been designed to use the finance and operation to transmit the data directly to the tax administration. So it is just part of, let us say, the flexibility and the functionality that reside in the electronic reporting platform. So basically, if you just navigate to the search the electronic reporting in the Google or just open the Microsoft Learn, which is a great repositories and library to search the core concepts in the Microsoft Finance and Operations, you will find that there is a three main components in the for the electronic reporting. So first of all, it starts from the data model, where you define the structure, the relationships, the fields that the records or record list that you need, you want to export or import data to or from. And then you create a model mapping with where you can establish the connection of the fields that you want to export or import to the data source that you have access via electronic reporting. And then you define the formats that you have. If it's an import file, so you have the format which can be in the Excel, CSV, JSON, text file, and also in the XML. So for example, the EDI, so it can be XML. So you can just define it as an import, and then you can define the format mapping to have imported. But this is this can be a little bit tricky to just start with that concept. So in order to have a better overview, so I have created this conceptual model. So if you see here, so in the data model, as I described, so we have the item types that we can just define. So we have from the screen, void, GUID, all of the field type in the finance and operations SQL and the table records already has been assigned in the item type in the electronic reporting. So in order to that you can interact with the tables data format via electronic reporting. Then from the data source, as you see here, you have access to the classes, enumeration, objected, which is a data provider, table and table records in finance and operations. lately also, Microsoft has already also added the functions as the group by functions, data collection, and also the barcodes in the specific format. So I will go through that in the business document part. So in the model mapping, you can map the data model that you have created to the data source. For example, if you want to export the data, so you can just, for example, choose the data provider as a class to extract the data, or you can choose the table or the data entity. So the good things in the electronic reporting data format or the data source, you have access to tables, table records, entity, and also the views. So if you have created the custom views in finance and operation, you have access to that via the electronic reporting. And it's quite good to have access to the custom views via electronic reporting to export the data. And then on this last part, which is the format designer, which call it the last part. So you have the data model, and now you need to design how you want to export this data. Then you can just define the layout, how or that needs, or the format type that you need to export the data. Is it the Excel file that you need to export? Is it the JSON, for example, file, PDF, Word, and XML? So, and also, if you have also you need to use it as an import, and let us say it's the JSON file that you need to import it. So you can just define the fields, then you need to map it to the data model, or we just call it to the destination here, which is our model mapping, to directly import the data by importing or using this format designer. So I hope that this conceptual model give you a better understanding about the full potentials that we can get from the electronic reporting. But in order to have a better understanding about this, so I have created this slide about the core capabilities. Since I have talked about that it can be used for both for the outgoing electronic documents, as I mentioned, and also ingoing, which you can use it to import the file. So there is basically some core capabilities back electronic reporting. First of all, it can be used as a replacement as the SSRS report. So this sentence or this this doesn't mean that SSRS reports will be depreciated. It means that electronic reporting in the output management version, which is a business document, has been created for this purpose. So instead of you use the SSRS standard report, you have this possibility to use the business document and electronic reporting. And the core capabilities here that you have access everything from the user interface. If you want to edit it, if you want to create it, and if you want to create a derived version that from the Microsoft, the one that it already has created. So essentially, you don't need to access to the Visual Studio, to the codes, and just create new codes and then release in the finance and operations, which takes time and you need to test it, and it makes that the solutions have a downtime and then to install the codes. So this is one of the most important core capabilities. And the second part, as I mentioned, since it is created for the integration, so hopefully, so it is nowadays supports both XML and JSON. So you can use this for transmit the data if you want. For example, if you have if you want to use the electronic invoice, so you can create this electronic reporting as a main motor to generate the e-invoice file. Then you can, afterward, I will just talk about the mechanism of the invoice, as I also already mentioned by the Gustav. So you can just create this mechanism to generate the file and then send it to the SFTP of the access point. So the access point can get the data and use it. And the same also, this is the same routines that Microsoft used also to send the data to the tax administration. So there is also another feature or another forms in Dynamics has designed for this purpose, but we can have a take a look soon about it. Then one of the most important part here, since we have access to the data source, mainly everything in the everything from the classes, data entities, and views, and also tables. So it supports translation of the model. So it means that via the electronic reporting, you have access to the label, system labels. So if you need to create a report, or if you need to create something that is changing by the language code, you have this possibility here in electronic reporting. So it's a great feature, for example, in the output management when you want to create a business document. So you can just choose that this document use the labels, and the label change based on the language code from the vendor or from the customer card. Or you can just use it from the document part. So this is very good that you have this possibility to create the configuration that can be also dynamically changed based on the labels that we have designed. We just talk about the data components, that this is absolutely fantastic that you have access to all of the data components in finance and operation directly from the user interface. This is the whole concept here. So you have access electronic reporting, via electronic reporting, which is on the user interface. You have access to this data, or you can just call it the data to export and access from that class or data entities to get the data. And at last, since SharePoint is a standard tool by Microsoft also, so this is also supported in the electronic reporting, that you can read the data or import the data directly from the SharePoint, and also send the data directly to the SharePoint. So this SharePoint integration can be used as a competitive advantage, basically, when you want to create a report and, for example, or create an export. For example, you have a bank integration. You want to send a file first to the SharePoint, and from the SharePoint you can use the logic apps or create a Power Automate to send the file to the bank's SFTP. So here you have either you can use this SharePoint as this standard process to send the data, or you can just get the data. For example, let's say you have a mechanism via the Power Automate, you get the data from the SFTP from the bank in the SharePoint, so you can import the data directly from the SharePoint in the Dynamics via electronic reporting. So since it has access to the SharePoint directly, so you can also use it as a data source for the Power BI. So Power BI can use this as a tool to read the data. But here it is completely important to know that this electronic reporting has designed for the output management and integration, but this can be used for the reporting purposes. But this is not the correct tool to use for the recording purposes. So it doesn't mean that you can use electronic reporting solely as a tool to export the data to feed the Power BI. So this is what I mentioned here. So I'm just talking about the capabilities here, and the capabilities directly associate with the mechanism that you want to take. So if it's something that you want to take it in the big amount of data, so this is not the correct tool. So you need either to check the Synapse links, or via the BIOT, or other capabilities and approaches that you can use in finance and operations. So basically, this is the core. We can just call it the core capabilities. But when it comes, we have just talked about the electronic invoices by Gustav. So I need to just show you how electronic invoices mechanism works in finance and operations. So if you see here, I have just created solely here the sender and receiver. So sender, exactly, it is a legal entity in the finance and operation, and receiver is a customer, basically. So either we have possibility to send the invoice file or the invoices via email, or if you see here, via the global repositories here, or the electronic reporting, so-called, so you can generate, first of all, the invoice file, which is will be stored in the electronic reporting jobs, which is in the Azure Blob. And then you need to create automatic here to move the file to the access point. So here is the access point which needs to validate the file afterwards. So it has also the validator in the access point. So you can also have possibility to validate the file before you send it to the access point. But it's better that once you send the file to the access point, it already has all of the requirements that you need. So once you send it to your access point, so it will be check the files and will check the address, registry, all of the lookups, the information in the file. As soon as it can be validated, so it sends the file to the customer access point. So once the customer gets the file, so it just read the file, so validate it again and just process it again and send it to the customer directly. And the customer will open it, this e-invoice file via the solution that they have. So somehow, for example, in Norway, some of the bank messages will be sent to the user via the electronic invoices. So, for example, if once I get the bank message from the bank, so I just open it from the bank. So it's an e-invoice. So I just open it. So there is also a container there, so to just convert the file to the PDF, so I can just see the file in the PDF. So this is the whole process that it happens in the electronic invoices, and the core concept here is that the electronic reporting is a motor to generate that file. So instead of that, you just call the developer to create that file for you, design the IF jobs for that, design it, how to export the data, design the format mapping, how the data needs to be looks like, and then create a release in Dynamics. So it is already added to the database repositories, so you can install it or import it in the finance and operation without downtime. Then you can just apply it and just attach it, as Gustav mentioned, in the account receivable parameters. Then apply the required setup and then generate the file. So when it comes to the mechanism to send the file directly to the access point, as I mentioned, so SharePoint can be used as a standard tool. And then you create a Power Platform or Power Automate to send or Logic Apps to send the file, or you can just design customization here to send directly file once it's been generated to the access point. So why we need to use that? So basically, so we talked about core capabilities, but the good things here, electronic reporting is low code. So it means it is not basically designed for the developers. Basically, it is designed for the business user rather than developers. And it has visual tools or editors in the user interface. So you can import the configuration from the Dataverse, create a configuration from the scratch without needing a downtime, or while you're changing the electronic reporting, let us say mapping or the format designer, there is no need to have a downtime in the solution. This is something like UI, let us say editor in the UI that you are working with, for example, Excel add-in or the Office add-in in finance and operation. So it is very good to know. And basically, it is not X++ coding. It is coding, but it is not X++ coding. So it is not a Visual Studio. You don't need to have the developer. Essentially, you don't need to have this knowledge to start with the business document. So from my point of view, as soon as you can Excel, you know the formula there, you know the logic, so you are one step ahead here, because it's basically use the Visual Basics, let us say, coding as the functions that is used there as a filter, where, or let us say the basic functions that can be used. But basically, it is not X++ coding. Number two, the good thing about the electronic reporting, this is a configuration that you import from the Dataverse. It is global, so it can be used across the multiple legal entities. So once you import the configuration, you can also design it that it just used for a specific country code. But basically, when it comes, for example, a good example for that, for the e-invoice, so you can just import it in one company. So you can use all of the companies that needs to send the e-invoice file. So you can use that configuration either. So the table is global. The important also notice here is that there is a zero downtime for the release. So you can either create a configuration in the, if you're doing everything from the scratch, so you can create a configuration in the development environment or a UAT and export it to the Dataverse directly, and then in the production environment, import it from the Dataverse without downtime. Or you can just export it directly to your PC and just import it in the specific target environment. And it's really easy to adopt. So it means that just export and import, and if you need to do the changes, so you can just choose it, do it in the development environment, and then as soon as it has been finished, so you can just test it and export it to the target environment as a UAT. And once it has been tested by the customer, so import it in the production, so you know that it will work. A good thing about electronic reporting, it can be versionized. So you can create several versions of this. For example, you can always create fix, create outfix, and as soon as it is working, for example, you need to have a latest fix, so you can just go and upgrade it to the latest version. An example for that can be the, for example, ISO 222 file. There are some customers that already use the old versions of the electronic reporting configuration for the PAIN 001 and also the CAMT 054, which is for the import of the return file from the bank. So as soon as it works, there is no need for the upgrades. So the good thing about electronic reporting is that you do not need to upgrade it. So as soon as it is working with the specific version, so you can just have it. So there is no push from the Microsoft that you need to go to the newest version. So every version that Microsoft comes for the electronic reporting already has the KB code for the hotfix. So you can go over that. Is it something that, for example, needs, they are going to fix something that we are working with, for example, fixing the performance issues. So you have possibility to go to the latest version in the UAT environment, and as soon as you have tested everything working, so just import it in the production. But this is not something that as something that you need to always go to the latest version of the electronic reporting. But sometimes there are some electronic reporting which is designed for the specific version of finance and operations. So, for example, when it comes to the safety, so some of the versions needs the latest version of the finance and operation based on the data source that is used. For example, there is a view that Microsoft has created in the latest version, doesn't exist in the previous version, so you need to upgrade first the environment so you can go with that electronic reporting configuration. From the developer side and from the also functional side, I must say also, you can debug it. So it means that there is a debugger tool in the UI via the electronic reporting. So you can debug the data that you want to import or export to have a better understanding and troubleshoot the case better. So it has happened several times that I used the debugger to find it out what is the correct table or what is the correct field that I need to use to map to my data source. So this is also very good to know. And also the good thing about this, it can be customized. So it can be developed based on your requirements. And essentially, you don't need specifically for the regulatory reports and business documents, which is the standard exist in the Dynamics, you don't need to start from the scratch. So you can go to the Dataverse repository, import in the finance and operation the electronic reporting that you want, and then you can start with that. And if it doesn't, for example, satisfy your requirements, you have a custom table, you have custom fields that needs to have included in this, so you can create the derived version of the standard and reuse from the model mapping and the logic that Microsoft already, or the, let us say, the engineers in the Microsoft already has designed. So it is very good to also know how Microsoft has designed the report. So you can, as soon as you open it, the electronic reporting configuration, so it can be a little bit scary, but afterwards, for start, always it's very hard, but afterwards you get used to that. So, and you need, you find how it can be easy afterwards to understand the data source is mapped, and the data model also has been created by Microsoft. Or sometimes you think that, okay, the model that Microsoft has created is so complicated, so you can start from the scratch and do all of the electronic reporting by yourself. But the good thing here, there's always, let us say, a source that you can use, which is the electronic reporting, which is exist in the Dataverse repositories. But we have talked about several arguments why we need to use electronic reporting. But the important thing here is that you need to be careful here, because it's still a low code. So if you start using Microsoft electronic reporting, or if you want to create a custom configuration here, you need to know that although there is no release time, there is no downtime, so if it's possible, if you can, behave it as a code, because now you can have it tested, create a release note on the changes that you created, and test first in the development or a UAT environment, and then put it in the production and check with the customer before you implement it in the production. It's completely important also when you want to import the newer version of the electronic reporting from the Dataverse repositories. So first import it in the UAT or development, and then in the production. So basically, it is better to just see it as a code, although it is not code and it's a low code, because it's still in its concept a development. So we have talked about the development. I just have one slide for the developers here. That here there is a possibility to troubleshoot the performance issues. So when you create electronic reporting, so you can create a performance issue. So, and also you can remove that performance issue. So basically, you have the specific formulas from the Visual Basic or SQL, like a first or null, var, filter, case functions. So you can just call the tables, create the join, and also get the custom field and create the outer join or inner join, and use also in the metadata in finance and operations. So it is also important that you consider the performance issue that you can potentially create in the Dynamics by the logics and the methods that you use. So based on this, I have just create this slide to just give it a notice that from the development point of view, so it is also possible to avoid such issues. And also, Microsoft has in the recent versions, I think from the T035, has added also some automatic check that it will help you when you have used, for example, a feature that can create a performance issue, to just help you to replace it with a specific function to avoid that. For example, a good example for that, there is a var filter function, which is basically where we'll check all of the database to find the filter that you have created. But when you have used the filter, so you just check exactly the node from the specific the data source that you have choose to certify. So it doesn't essentially choose all of the records on the table to find that the record. So this is something, just an example here. So from the development side, this is also possible to create the clean report in finance and operations, also configurations that have a minimal performance issue. So I have talked about electronic reporting, its concept, and also the conceptual model, why we need to use that, and the core capabilities. But when it comes to the business documents, or it's so-called configurable business documents, because you have possibility to configure it before or for generating the document. But I just, in a nutshell, call the business document visualization part of the electronic reporting. So basically, in finance and operations, Microsoft has landed the business document as one of replacements of the standard SSRS report, where you have possibility to create the report from the Excel, from the Word, and you have possibility to just change the layout from the user interface and from the Word adds in finance and operations. So you can design the layout that you want and export the data via the model mapping that you have created via the electronic reporting or the model mapping. If you see here, I already have provided a screenshot about for example, packing slip in the Norwegian language, also a price etiquette or the price label that can be used for the retail companies to generate the labels in the specific label or the barcode format from the Dynamics. So for example, this is the outlet price that I have just created for one customer by the electronic reporting, or let us say business documents, in the Word format, and it has been converted also automatically to the PDF. But in order to have better understanding, when I call about the SSRS reports and the business document, so I have just mentioned that in this slide, if you see here, I have just mentioned all of the standard documents that exist in the finance and operations, then use the data provider in the SSRS. So they use the SSRS motor to generate the file or the report in the finance and operations. So for each of these, Microsoft has created a business document in both Excel and Word format. And if you see here, since Microsoft has the plan to replace it in when I call it replacement, it doesn't mean specifically that the SSRS reports will be depreciated and it will be removed. I mean something like a parallel solution here. So if you see here, for example, specifically for the fixed assets, in the finance and operations, you can see the reports designed basically just in the electronic reporting or a business document than in the SSRS. For example, when it comes to the fixed asset roll forward or fixed asset acquisitions, there is specifically a function in the finance operation to generate the file via the electronic reporting in the Excel and or to have a better overview of the specific report. So you can just navigate to finance and operations on the fixed assets. I just recommend to just check it out. There are some standard functions that Microsoft already has created to export the data. Or when it comes to the business documents, so for example, for the vendor invoice, for the project invoice, so you can just see that for every standard report that Microsoft already has in the solution, so they have created the replacement, or they have created the similar one via the business document in both Excel and Word templates. So basically, since we had the electronic reporting conceptual model, so here I had just removed the import one because the business document basically is the output management, so how you can export the file. So I have the data model. I can use either the objects, which is the classes, the data provider. That data provider are those classes that Microsoft has created to export the data for specific reports or documents that Microsoft has designed in the finance and operations. For example, the free text invoice, sales invoice, project invoice that has been created. And if you see here on the format designer, you have possibility to design the report that you like in the Excel, CSV, or Word file, and also PDF. And also there is a standard converter in the electronic reporting and also in the destination part, so you can just convert the file from the Excel and Word directly to the PDF. I also have just added this great functionality that is compatible to use the barcode formats and per today, so they have mostly the most of the formats that can be used specifically for the products. From the code 128 to the EAN 13 that is mostly used in the Europe. So when it comes to the components is exactly like the electronic reporting, because electronic reporting is the motor to generate that. The only difference here is on the format designers. In the format designer, you need to have a layout. So this layout can be designed either in Word, Excel, or the CSV. So when it comes to the model mapping, so as I mentioned, when it comes to the business document, so you can just call the report data provider from the finance and operation here, and then use it on the model mapping to extract the data through the data model that we have created. So this connection is exactly on this part the same as the SSRS. While you have possibility to have changed the mapping, update the mapping, or start from the scratch and create your own model, but use the standard data provider in your data model. And in the format file, so you have possibility to use either to design it in the Excel or in the Word. But if you want to use it in Excel, so you need to activate the name manager. And if you want to use Word to design the document, so you need to activate the content control. So I have already created a blog series about this, how to start with the business document from the scratch in my blog. So you can have a take a look there, so you know how you can start working and designing your business document from the scratch or from the derived version from the Microsoft. So here you have possibility to define which fields that you need to map. The difference between the Excel and Word, from my point of view, Word is much easier than Excel. But in Word, you need to define the format mapping first in the electronic reporting, upload your file so that the content control will be updated with your report format. In the Excel is again, so first you design the report or the layout in the Excel, then you import it to the finance and to the format designer, so it will populate all of the fields that you have designed. Then you start mapping. So from the performance point of view, I have read some issues from the Microsoft that they meant that the Word one is much easier to be converted to the PDF than the Excel. But you need to just compare this performance case to case. So basically, I cannot give a clear answer what is the best for the in order to just compare it in the performance issue. But I get when I check the Yammer group, when I check the community forum. So I have seen positive feedback on the Word side than on the Excel when it comes to the performance. And when it comes to creating the business document, so there is a skill required. So let us say this is, although it is designed for the business users, so basically it is not easy to start. So when you want to start with the business document, based on the feedback that I have gathered from the community, everyone thinks it's so sophisticated to start. But afterward, when you must to work with that, or when you just work gradually with that, so you find it, you understand it, you understand the logic better, and it also gives you insight to better understanding of the tables, structures, entities, and how you can call the data from the data provider, so you can better understand that how do you can take the data or import the data, or you get a better understanding on the structures and how finance and operations is designed. So there's also, for this case, there is an open Word designer in the finance and operation as a specific workspace for the business document. So you can edit your document or create your custom or derived document via that workspace. But I do recommend, if you want to start to design the document, so do it by the Excel and the Word in your local PC, and then upload it directly to the format designer to do the changes. Then do it on the user interface of finance and operation. But it is up to you. So this feature also available, so you can use it. Next to that, so dealing with the unique document types. So if you see here, so I have imported those standard business documents, and I have created the right version. So when it comes to the specific requirements, so essentially, as I mentioned, you don't need to start from the scratch. So you can just import the standard one, and then create, for example, the right version, and just change the layout that Microsoft has used. For example, import your own layout that you need to use, and then start to remap everything that you need with the custom field, with the labels that you need to use. So you can reuse many mappings from the Microsoft in this case. So let us say that if you want to start with the business document, so first of all, I just recommend to have good patience for start. So have a cup of tea, cup of coffee, and prepare yourself to start with something that it can be difficult, but at the start. But basically, for the start, so you need to first to associate your environment in the Power Platform Admin Center to the Dataverse, so you can get access to the database repositories. Then you can go through, open the Dataverse repositories, and import the specific business document or electronic reporting that you want. As Gustav mentioned, as soon as you choose the format, so it will define by itself the model mapping and also the data model. So it will be installed the correspondent model mapping and data model. But in a case that there are sometimes that Microsoft changed the model mapping without changing in a data model. So it does. I do recommend. So just check it out. The model mapping that Microsoft specifically has created for the business document. Specifically, you can just search for the RDP. So those one in the parentheses that has the RDP, so there are model mappings that Microsoft has created for the business document. But except that, there's also other model mapping that you can just check it out, or the data model, and just update it to the latest version. And if you see here on the description, you have a possibility to check the IDs in the LCS to find it out what Microsoft has changed in this new version. And then you have, when it comes to start with the business document, as soon as you have installed it, so you need to attach it to the print management setup. In the account receivable, account payable project, there is a specific form for that, which is on the form setup, on the form setup, and general print management. So you can associate the model that you have created to the document that you want to generate. For example, in this case, I have associated from the SSRS1, I have changed it to the business document. And so this is the whole setup, but to have a better overview, so you can, as I mentioned, you can check my blog. I will have a short demo also soon for that. But the good thing about we have talked about electronic reporting business documents, but one of the critical or one of the important concepts that we need to understand about this is the distribution, how we can distribute this output file or this file that needs to be imported or exported. Per today, so Microsoft has a standard form for that, which call it electronic reporting destination. That is responsible for the distribution of the electronic reporting configurations and business documents. So it can be either used as an email, archive, so you can send it as an email directly from the finance operation, archive it in the electronic reporting jobs, an electronic reporting archive job with a specific form that Microsoft has created in the finance and operations. And the file will be stored in the Azure blob. So it is reside in the Dynamics, so you can access it via that form in finance and operation. Or you can just activate the file so you download it as soon as the file is generated, so it will be downloaded in the in the browser that you are using. Or you have possibility to just send it to the screen of the browser. So in this case, there is also possibility to convert it to the PDF before it has been. For example, let us say you have generated the layout, you have created the layout in Excel, but you just activate the conversion to the PDF in the screen. So you just see it in the PDF. And the last part, since you have access to the Power BI, to the SharePoint, so you can send the data directly to the Power BI. So for the email part, if you see here, so once you activate it, you just can call the configuration from and to from the business, from the model mapping. So if you already have designed, for example, to get the data from the model mapping, you have possibility to just get the data there. For example, in most of the cases that I'm working with the customers, so they have used the from and to, from the configuration in the model mapping, because we already has created the logic to get the contact information from the customer card or from the document. And in the subject and in the body, so you have also possibility to use the labels. So in a case that you want to send it in a specific language based on the customer language, you have this possibility. And this is, for example, example of the invoice that has been sent from the finance and operation to a customer. On the next part, there is an archive. So if you see here, as soon as you archive it, you can either archive it in SharePoint or you can archive it in the finance and operation archive jobs or electronic reporting jobs. So this is also possible to have this archive, so you can track everything that you have generated via electronic reporting in this specific form. And then when it comes to the PDF conversion, as I mentioned, there's two approaches to convert it. You can either convert it directly from the format designer, or you can convert it in the business and the electronic reporting destination. So if you see in this case, I use the Word file, which I converted to the PDF. And in this case, I use the PDF converter container. So I do not activate the convert to PDF because I already converted while it has been generated. It also has a PDF merger in a case that you have several PDF files that needs to be generated. So you can merge it to one file and generate it via the electronic reporting. But when you want to start with the business document from the scratch, so I have just created the approach to see the document. So I just delegate it in the 4 levels of the header, document details, lines and footers. And then you can just define everything that is here in 2 levels also, labels and values. For example, when it comes to the line, so you can just define a product label, which is the label of the header of the product, and the values. So this is the simplest approaches that I have found in regards to the feedback from the users that when they want to start with a business document. So that you just see it in the 4 segments: header, document detail, lines, and footer. And the last part, as I told, so you can just use the system code values in order to have the system code values. So you can just check with the system administrator or a developer to give you the text file of the specific language that you are using. I just recommend that if you are using other language than English, so get that label code both in English and also the language code in your country language code, so you can compare it that when you use the English one, so it is also translated correctly in the labels to your language, because sometimes there is the same labels in a specific translation, so maybe you need to use another one from the system labels. While also electronic reporting is compatible to create a custom label. So you can create a custom label without a SQL code. So you can, Visual Studio Code. So you can use it, create a custom label in the electronic reporting. It has happened, for example, in several cases. So I have created this electronic reporting custom labels because it hasn't translated correctly in the Norwegian, the system labels. And then we will have a short demo on the packing slip. So I will go through that by now. So first of all, so I have imported the business document from the Dataverse. So basically, I need to check it out. And as I mentioned, in the account payable, receivable, and project, you need to go to form setup and print management, and then activate the configuration that you, for the business document in the print management configuration. For example, in this case, I will go through the packing slip. So I just make sure that, okay, this is already the custom one or the one that Microsoft has added. So it's already associated here. Then I navigate to electronic organization administration and electronic reporting destinations, and I define the distribution here. So in this case, I have just defined that once it has been run by view and print, so it will be printed into the screen. So it will be just populated in the screen. So everything from the distribution also in the place. So I need to go to the packing slip here. In this case, I have created Microsoft Norway, for example, as a customer, and I have just run a packing slip. So once I click either on the overview, preview, or on the print management, so the report will be generated. So if you see, so the report is generated now. So basically, it's now in English. So I have to also use the barcodes based on the demo product that I have created. And I just show that this is possibility to call the invoice address, delivery address here also. And just you can design the layout, what you like. And in this case, to use this power of the labels, so if I just come back to my sales order, because in the model mapping, I used the customer language just for test to change this label. So if I just go to my customer and change the language to another language that I want to see the invoice. For example, this is the Microsoft Norway, so they just say that they need the invoice, for example, packing slip in the Norwegian language, so I just change it to the Norwegian language. So I just save it, then I just come back to the original document and just generate it again. So as you see, so it has been automatically generated to with the Norwegian language. And it's quite brilliant that you have possibility to parameter, use it as a parameter to change the invoice based on the parameter that you define. So basically, you can use the document language here, which comes around the customer. But in this case, I have just set it from the customer card, so I have this flexibility to change the language of specific documents. So if I just come back to our session again, so I have not. I have just also created as a video in a case that I missed the internet. So at least, or I missed the dynamic study. So at least I have possibility to show you. So you will receive it also afterward the record. Then I have just created some overview how to create. So as I mentioned, so you can just follow up my blog to have better understanding. So I just create a checkbox here that once you need each of which requirement, which of the segments or components you need to customize. So, and then as a last point, so we just come to the pros and cons. So to me, based on the feedback that I gathered, so first of all, it's flexible. So, and you have possibility to just start to customize it, import it without the release time. Everything is from the user interface, so it's very good. You can debug everything. It is compatible with the specific versions, or also you can also you don't have this push from the Microsoft to update always to the next version here. So this is based on what is your version, and this can be also localized. So if you have, for example, a report, so you can create a several version of it in a specific countries for a specific requirement, and you can versionize it also. So there is a great tool that from the pros. But when it comes to the cons, so basically the only cons that from my point of view and the feedbacks that I gathered, so it's hard to start. So for almost a business users than the developers, because developers can understand it, and maybe it's a very low, let us say, tool for them to work with, because they miss the flexibility that they have via the Visual Studio. But at least they are much easier for them to understand. But I must say that one of the cons here that you need ER knowledge. So it means that you need to know a little bit from finance and operation, the process, how does it work. But at least this is something, as I mentioned, it's hard to start, but you can just earn it gradually by testing and learning by doing. And also, there is a room for the questions. I am available both in the Teams afterward to answer your question, or you can just write your question in the finance community forum, and also in the Yammer. If I can help, I would be glad to do that. And last of all, so I need to thank from Raz for supporting and also creating and initiating this great bootcamp, and also the great sponsors that has provided this chance for us to sit together and have share our knowledge and learn from each other. So I hope that you have find this session fruitful, and just let me know, Raz, if it's any question that you think that I need to answer now, or if you think I can just follow it up with the teams afterward.
Thank you so much, Alireza. So there's only a couple of questions. It is in the Teams chat. Aleem is asking, do you recommend to use business documents instead of SSRS? Is there pros and cons for each? I know you covered that already in your session. But you might want to give a little reminder to Aleem on the pros that business documents has of SSRS, maybe.
Basically, my short answer is based on your requirements. If the SSRS, the standard one, is already good to use, so just use that. But if you think that you need to customize it based on your requirements, so I do recommend to customize it via the business document, then customizing it in the Visual Studio by the developer.
And Max is asking, is it possible in standard to upload an ISO 2022 payment file directly to an SFTP server?
Per today, there is not a standard file transfer to the SFTP in the standard. I have created a case from the idea, so if Microsoft can add it, because in the BC or Business Central, we have this possibility, not in the finance and operations. So you need to, in the finance and operation, either create a custom code or as a customization out of the box, or use the SharePoint to send the data directly to the SharePoint, and then from the SharePoint, use the Power Automate to transfer a file to SFTP, or using the logic apps.
Fantastic. So that's the final questions, Ali. You've actually did a longer session than expected, actually, and you still finished on time. So thank you so much. In fact, we'll be carrying on next week, but this time with Alireza. We're not finished yet, guys. We're just getting started. There's a lot to take in today. We've covered a lot of topics, a lot of it, a lot more advanced than you probably would have expected. But it's great, right? It's helping everyone, and the fact that you're asking questions shows how useful the content is. So I know it's been a long day for everyone. So we're going to resume with Alireza next Thursday, where he'll be talking about the DMF, right? And we'll be covering more of the additional features of F&O, which we haven't covered today. So it'll be the more wider ranging features, okay? So everybody, I want to thank you. Huge round of applause to you, Alireza, for staying up so late today, and everyone who's been attending, right, from all around the world. And we're going to carry on next week. I got a strong feeling that everyone is going to hugely benefit from this boot camp, based on the depth we're getting to. And one more thing to finish before we go today, another bit of great news. Based on the questions that everyone's been asking, based on the feedback, we will be hosting another boot camp to supplement the information around and the deeper deep dive into counting concepts in F&O, as well as more of a deep dive into posting transactions, right? Because Brittany ran out of time today because we had limited amount of time. So what we're going to do instead is have a whole boot camp just focused on posting transactions, transaction life cycles, accounting concepts, okay? Because we designed this boot camp based on your needs, on everyone's needs, not just yours, everyone's needs. And this has helped us to understand what we should be covering. So once again, thank you, everyone. You will all get an email regarding that particular boot camp. It most likely will take place in March. So it'll happen after we've completed this particular boot camp, and in March. So once February is finished, we've completed all the tracks for the F&O boot camp. Then in March we will schedule that particular deep dive into financial transactions and accounting for F&O. So that's one of the things that we actually established only today, right? So we'll get that information out to you. So once again, thank you, Alireza. Huge thanks to all the speakers. Andre, he stayed on most of today. I want to thank you, Andre. He's still online. Thank you, Andre. You've been ill. I just want to thank you for staying on all supporting the event. You just recovered only recently. I just want to thank you for answering the questions in the chat as well. Andre, do you have anything to mention to the community members based on what they've been asking today? Or by the way, Andre will also be doing some more sessions as well on security, and this is just the beginning, right? Andre, do you have any final comments before we wrap up?
Actually, your words should be the final, as you are just the driving force behind these bootcamps. However, just a lot of great sessions. Even I had learned something new today, so that's good. And just to be honest, I went down to get some dinner, but took it to my desk here. Still, yes, today a bit recovering from the flu I had, but just being here, and also in the background doing some performance analysis for a client. It gave me a better feeling again and again, and I felt better with every hour. So I think the flu is over for me. Well, actually, for all those people who attended all the sessions today, many, many thanks for your interest. And it shows also just the need for these kind of events. And I'm always happy to share, just like Alireza and Raz. And just, thanks for an incredible bootcamp today.
Fantastic. Well done, everyone. Thank you. Thank you all the speakers, and thank you all attendees for making it through. It's been a long day. It's been 8 hours, so we'll see you again next week. May the power be with you. See you all next week. Take care, guys. Enjoy your evening. Enjoy your weekend. Get some rest, well-deserved rest, and see you next week. Take care, guys. Goodbye.
Goodbye.
Okay.